This is the Danger Close Podcast, Beyond the Books with me, Jack Carr.
Welcome to the Danger Close Podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're into archery or bow hunting, my guest today needs no introduction. John Dudley, Nock On TV, Nock On Archery on YouTube, and knockonarchery.com. He's been a friend for years, just finished up at the Total Archery Challenge here in Utah yesterday, and stopped by today for a conversation. So now, without further ado, John Dudley. You might see that I collaborate with Ironclad on a lot of different projects. In fact, I have worked with them on my book trailers, this podcast, as well as a few other exciting endeavors that are currently in development. Ironclad teams up with some of the biggest brands in the world to create dynamic films, series, podcasts, and ad campaigns. If you are a brand or individual looking to elevate your content or start a podcast, don't hesitate to reach out through their website. This is Ironclad.com, and make sure you follow them on all major platforms at This Is Ironclad. Dudley, what's up, buddy?
What is up?
Thank you for coming up, man.
No doubt.
Dude, you have been going
long
so
overdue,
hard.
I feel like.
I know. It feels like one long day, but I realize that it's been a long time since I actually saw you, even though with social and stuff. I feel like I'm, keeping up with what you've been doing.
I know. We were talking about, when we first rolled up, we talked about the time where our whole network of friends, where we all met together that time in San Diego. We all went and watched Rogan's show together. We were all in the limousine, all of us. And at that time, we all had a vision of what we wanted to do. I don't think the first book was...
book was out. Yep.
The first book had just...
But it only been out by, a couple months.
At that point. Mm-hmm. But probably for the year prior to that, we all started interacting.
Yeah. But
honestly, the book series hadn't began at first. Cleared Hot hadn't happened, right? Andy was Andy. Mm-hmm. I think Jocko had started down the, kind of out of the victory. Obviously you had the extreme ownership side of things, but the Jocko Fuel side and the Origin side hadn't start. All of our friend networks, even Evan was still growing Black Rifle, right? I mean, that was obviously halfway to Black Rifle getting to where it is.
Yeah.
So we were all just focused on these, what our niche was, and we were all just hustling, and we were just molecules crossing each other and bouncing, feeding off each other and stuff like that. But time has flown by.
Crazy.
I feel like COVID was just a black hole of time, to where it's almost like it was the quantum realm, where we all didn't see each other for a period of time, to where our I don't know, our pattern of when we cross each other, I feel like it changed to where now we're all going past the same points, but at slightly different times. Yeah. It's like driving through Park City one day and you don't hit one light, but then it's if you catch the wrong one, you're am I going to catch every single one from the top to the bottom?
It's possible.
Yeah.
Oh man. I remember at Performance Archery, Bob Frome, Evan on the floor in the corner making coffee for us. He was grinding the coffee out of his travel pack.
Yeah.
And I'm what is that? And I was taking notes on how he was doing it. And then I went and I bought what's the thing called? The little glass thing where, you make the pour over and all that.
Yeah.
And
The Chemex.
The Chemex. And then he had this little Black Rifle Coffee branded little grinder, for the travel kit and all that stuff. So he made us coffee on the floor. And then when you taught that class, I think it was the next day, and maybe it was the day before. I think it was the day after we went to Rogan's show, where we went back to Performance Archery, and you had a small group of people there, and you went through all the points of performance and all those things. And I remember taking notes and videos, and that's what I used in Savage Sun that I wrote in, because I have Reese and Rafe going through, that's a big one with archery. And then I sent it to you, and I said, hey, is this right? Because I want to make sure. So I try to do as much of the work as possible with what I knew, and then what the notes that I'd taken and all that stuff. And then you went back and you edited, no, do this here and that there and that sort of a thing. And so we got it in there so that people who are really into it and people that follow Nock On and you, and they train and they go out to Total Archery Challenge and link up with you and do all that stuff, that they'd read it and be like, oh wow, this guy at least did his research, or at least he was smart enough to send this to Dudley to edit. And so that for me, that was that morning. I think it was the morning after Rogan's show where we did that, and I took a bunch of notes and pictures and incorporated that all into Savage Sun.
That's what makes the books good, though, is because you're kind of a gear nerd, and you explain the details to where people that are from those different fields, they're like, he's actually talking the lingo of this weapon category or this vehicle category. You kind of go deep down the rabbit hole of that stuff. So it's been fun. Well, even like we were together when you met Chris. Yeah, for the first in person. Yeah, and like
we were out here just about 45 minutes from where we are right now.
Yeah, and Chris and Jared, us, and
Barclow was there, I think.
Yeah, and that was like when like you made the pitch to Chris, right? Like,
no, he already got it, but we hadn't met up in person yet.
Okay.
So yeah, he got it in January of 2018.
Okay.
He read it in December. Jared called and hadn't talked to him for like 5 years because we got out of the SEAL teams and started doing our things. And then he called and wanted to read the book because he knew it was coming out. He heard it was coming out. So I sent it to him about 6 months in advance. So November of 2017, I sent it to him, and then he gave it to Chris in December, and Chris read it in December of 2017, optioned it first week in 2018. And then we didn't meet up until, was it August, September? It must be September, right?
Yeah, it was September for sure.
Obviously of 2018, of 2018. Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because I know I've seen Chris a few times. But I knew it was coming. Like you had said, I think he loves his story, and honestly, it's perfect. It was a perfect part for him because his relationship with Jared, like you could tell he loved and respected that part of Jared. Mm-hmm. So for him to be able to like play that role, he knew he couldn't be a poser.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew
it was very important to him.
Like, 100%. I was like, this is going to be a cool dynamic because honestly, Jared's in Chris's real tight network of circle of trust. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he could like look at someone that is looking out for his best interests immediately and like how he's portraying that role, I knew it'd be good.
Yeah, no, he was all in, obviously, on all he did. He was very passionate about this and is excited about what's ahead, which is super cool. And I love when those, being attached to your phone, there's obviously some negatives there, but I like when the memories pop up. And every now and again, that memory will pop up, and it's you, me, Rogan, and Jared at that place down the road here where we were. And Chris, and all of us together there, which was really, really cool. So I see that pop up, I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. Lots happened since then.
Well, what's crazy is I was somewhere with Rogan, and I got up early in the morning and I went to work out, and I'm in there working out, and Chris wears one hat where if I see him in that hat, I'm going to know it's Chris. Mm-hmm. Like even if he pulls it down, there's one hat that he wears where like, to me, that was the giveaway. And so I'm in there working out, and he's, a lot of times if someone's high profile, they're going to work out, but like try to not be facing where they're like making eye contact with people. And so I just like sent a text and I'm like, either I'm looking at your doppelganger or we're working out next to each other.
No way.
And all of a sudden I was like, zoop, and all of a sudden I hear zoop, because he was getting ready. He was literally becoming Reese, nice. Right? So he was like doing all his ab work on the floor, and all of a sudden he just like pops up over the machines, and he's like, dude,
no way,
because he was on his honeymoon.
Oh, I know where you were. Yeah.
And so he's just like, are you kidding me? I said, sweet, man. But that just goes.
That's dedication right there.
Well, yeah,
man, working out on the honeymoon, Chris. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. It was pretty cool, and such a down to earth guy too.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And did you build, when we linked up out here in Utah, did you build a bow for him for that, or he was using his own bow then?
No, I had built one for them because I've
Ahead
built
of time.
several. Yeah, I've built
in
several.
2018, so ahead of time.
I've built several, and so that was at the time that was when I was with Hoyt still. His first one was with a Hoyt, and then when I switched over, you know, when people kind of see in my social media what I'm doing, friends, sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, I see you're going down this. Anything we can do to help you and support you, let us know."
Yeah.
And so yeah, he kind of said that, and he's like, obviously I knew the movie was or the series was coming out ahead of time, like, because that was, you know, probably 2 years prior to the rest of the world, like, having the big launch.
Yeah.
So he kind of said, which one do you want? Like, what do you want for props and the thing? So I just said, well, honestly, I said, I don't want to build you a new one because Reese is a killer. And I said, Reese needs a legit killing bow. So the bow that Reese had actually had killed an elk. And so if you look at the details, there's like even blood in that knock.
That's
because
awesome.
I wanted like you have difference in the details, especially with gear. And I thought, don't just have a brand new shiny bow. Like, this thing needs to have some scrapes off it. The string should be a little bit fuzzy.
Nice.
You know, so that's what everyone remembers from the intro to the series.
Right there. It's like one of these right here.
Yeah.
I mean, there it is. There's
very
PSE
first.
right here. We got the little Sitka camo on this one. This is the one you built for me. Chris's is very similar. And then right in the beginning of the show, right in the opening credits, you know, boom. And you never know with the opening credits because you hire a company that just does credits.
Right.
And so you kind of give your vision or whatever, and then they go to work and they send you
50,000 different B-roll clips.
a couple different options.
Yeah.
And then you talk about them as the executive producers talk about them, and Chris and everybody, and weigh in, and then it goes back and forth a few times till you get it whittled down or change it to be what it ends up being in the end. But yeah, so your bow, arrows made it, you know, it's kind of artsy, kind of, you know, out of focus, in focus type thing as the credits are playing. But then if people look, they can see in his office that there's the Nock On mat is right there. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it in, obviously, to final cuts, because so much gets edited out. But
and there's more to come. It's not like that was just the end. Right?
That's it. Yeah.
And what's awesome about that is the people that notice is like our true followers that have been with us since the beginning. It's kind of like there's people that have started. I've got friends that are Jack Carr from the first book all the way through to the last. And when they see the little background things like on your prop set and stuff like that, they notice the little trinkets and the details. Yeah. So we had a lot of people DMing us saying like, that's this out of focus. I can tell like in the background. And like even the picture of Chris with that elk.
Yeah. Like, only a few people caught that.
I picked up on that right away because obviously I know, you know, the politics of how much of that side of your personal life actors and mainstream media people, you know, are comfortable showing, because some of it's just personal. You know, for Chris, I knew it was personal because he's a legit hunter and a legit fisherman. You know, he's not just playing that part. He's really passionate about it. You know, he sent like some charcuterie one time, but like with that came the whole story of like the sheep and the family that like does this all for him. And awesome. It was like, okay, this guy isn't, you know, this is the hunting side, and that side, he's really passionate about it. Shows who he is.
That's important to the character too. I mean, I was thinking like it'd be hard. Like I had Chris in mind from the very beginning, before Guardians of the Galaxy, before Jurassic World, before all that stuff. Just when he was in Zero Dark 30, very small part as a SEAL, and then in Parks and Rec. So two very different roles. But I saw that range, and he just seemed like a good guy. Yeah. And so as I was writing it, I thought of him playing the role. I didn't think of James Reese as him. I thought of Chris playing that role eventually. But then now I think like if it had been somebody else that ended up with it, and they weren't a hunter, they weren't like a guy's guy, you know, and they were just acting like, yeah, maybe it works out, but I think it'd be missing that authenticity part of it that's so important today to people who are choosing who to spend their time with, whether it's on social media or it's reading a book or it's watching a film or whatever else. Like I think, it could have worked with somebody else, but it wouldn't have been what it is because of that personal touch point that Chris has with the character, and then from his background. So anyway, so I think there was nobody else in my mind when I started writing it that could have pulled. I mean, that could have played James Reese. I mean, somebody could have done it, but like you said, without those personal, real touch points that are authentic, it would have been different.
He got to work with people that are close to his personal circle.
Yeah.
Which then, you know, I think that came across.
Yeah.
So do you think Chris's part with Zero Dark 30? Do you think that kind of like flipped that little switch of like me being a SEAL was like legit? And I assume Jared and him were still, because that's where they met. That's where they met. That's right.
That's where they met.
I remember because he went to
down to Buds.
He went down to Buds, right? So he was on Coronado.
Yep. Okay. Came down, and Jared was one of the instructors that got to take that. 2 actors came down. Chris was one of them, and they ran the O course and checked everything out and all that sort of thing. And then, they hit it off and have been best buds ever since.
That's cool.
Yeah. Now Jared plays Boozer, so he plays Chris's buddy Reese's buddy in the series. He's an executive producer now in this next one that we're doing. He was a producer last time. So I advised on the scripts last time, same thing with Jared. And now this next time, he's writing on it. So executive producer, it's awesome to see him grow in this new profession that he's so passionate about, and have it be attached to this project with Chris and with me and our other buddy, Ray Mendoza, who does the technical advising. And it's just a great team. Really cool.
It's almost strange to think back at how far it was when the book launched, because you remember I was with a guy that you don't know. Sharon and I were in Times Square when the first blip came up on Times Square.
Really?
I remember
Savage Sun, I remember, and you sent somebody down there.
It was the first.
Or you asked somebody to go take a picture.
I saw it, and I ended up calling back down. I'm like, will you stand there until it hits rotation again? And I'm like, dude, you're on Times Square. Like, it's right here. I don't know. Was it the first or second?
I think it was Savage Sun. I'm not positive. So I think it was the third one, because that was the archery side of it, which is why your buddy kind of noticed it and stayed there, sent you the picture.
Yeah.
Because he knew there was the connection with that book in particular. Right. And then I'm like, oh man, that's awesome, because it was COVID.
Yeah.
So I think that was my first time being in Times Square, and for it to be in Times Square at a time when no one else was in Times Square was like, because it's April of 2020.
Yeah.
And when the book came out. So that's when still people were locked down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, finally in Times Square, there's nobody there to see it. And then you had your buddy go take some pictures, which was awesome.
Do you ever wish you would have taken one different direction? Are there are you just like, this is his path and all I'm doing is like seeing the next turn ahead? I mean, have you ever thought like, now that I'm this far down, I should have just taken one turn differently back there? Or do you think?
No, I mean, little things probably. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Little things here and there you want to refine, because we always want to refine and do better going forward, take lessons from the past, apply them going forward as wisdom. So it makes sense to analyze what you've done in the past so you can grow and do things better going forward. But nothing huge. I think it's more refinements. I think it's more the stumbles that any entrepreneur or business person is going to take on the business side out of the gate, just because you don't know.
Yeah.
And then coming out of the SEAL team is like, everything looks great to me, business wise. Like there's a difference, I think, between being a businessman and being an entrepreneur. And that's why you have an entrepreneur that starts a business and then eventually sells it maybe, or hands it off to a CEO and people who have experience building companies and doing that sort of a thing. And I think those are a little different. Sometimes they can be the same, but I think a lot of times it's different. And for me, definitely I have an entrepreneurial type of a mindset. Had that in the SEAL teams. You have to, because you're adapting to this enemy who's always adapting to you. So you have to be creative, and you have to be aggressively creative on the battlefield. Same thing here as an entrepreneur, doing these things just like you guys. Very similar, but different. I think once you like reading a contract, it all looks like Greek to me, but it also looks great. Yeah. Like, this sounds wonderful. Everything looks great after the SEAL teams. Like, this sounds wonderful. So I think there's mistakes on that side of the house, certainly. But now as you grow and you professionalize, and now you realize it's time to bring in some people that really know what they're doing on that side, that I can do what I love, which is the creative part, which is the writing. But I still love doing the things that help grow at that stage. Like when you're still in the garage, like you're building a computer company in 1977, and you're in your garage and you built this thing and no one knows it exists, and you're the person who builds it, who gets the word out about it. You're the CEO, the CFO, the CMO. If there was social media back then, you'd be the social media manager. You're all of it, and you're all in on it. And then it grows and people start to find out about it, and people start buying them and telling their friends, and then it grows and grows and grows. And eventually you need to professionalize some of that so you can go back to, maybe you do like the the part that is the building.
Yeah.
Or maybe now you hand that side off and you love the marketing side of it or whatever, or you like bridging that gap, or you find your niche that helps add value overall. So, so I think there's nothing I look back on and say, man, if only I'd taken that left turn when I went right. And I didn't, man. So I don't have those kinds.
Yeah.
They're more smaller, and I'm more probably the stumbles that anybody in business is going to encounter.
Do you think the favorite part about the direction of the books, do you think it's kind of the gruesomeness of like when he gets mad?
That part is certainly therapeutic, and keeps me out of prison, which is nice.
So yeah, before you go too far, because like part of me thinks like, if you didn't have any rules when you were in the teams, were there times where you would have wanted to, like, if you were like, if I didn't have any rules, you know, that I had to do because I'm working for the government in this situation, especially if you knew like getting certain information or whatever was going to literally be critical for America, you know, are some of those things where like in your mind, you're like, man, I would just love to do this?
Well, it's more like, you have to understand that as a leader that you have to maintain the moral high ground, both strategically and for your guys, for their long-term well-being. So incorporating different scenarios where you have to deal with those sorts of things in training. So the first time you get downrange, some 21-year-old kid, brand new SEAL, it's not the first time that he's thinking about, oh, I think this guy is the IED maker who killed our friend type thing, and I'm in the room with him alone, like that sort of a thing. Like you don't want that to be the first time that this kid is ever thinking about that situation. So articulating how important it is to maintain the moral high ground, but there are other things that if you are still maintaining the moral high ground, you wish you could do, like go into a mosque that is obviously being used as a like a headquarters element or weapon storage or an IED facility or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you know, 100%, but you can't go in there. Like that sort of a thing.
Right.
Those sort of sensitivities. 2004 Najaf, we had the Jaish al-Mahdi militia pushed in to the Imam Ali Mosque in Old Town Najaf, and it's one of the holiest sites in all of Islam. But we'd fought for, I think it was a 2-week campaign, 11 days that me and my sniper team were involved in it. But it was day, night, through the streets, as close to the World War II combat movies that I'd seen, because usually we're going out at night, we're 3 a.m, you're kicking in a door, grabbing somebody out of bed, taking them back for interrogation, like that sort of a thing. But this was all day, every day, 11 days straight urban warfare. Yeah. And we had them essentially, we take block by block every day, and they were holed up in the Imam Ali Mosque. So there's a lot of them in there. Yeah. And, you know, so a younger me at the time was like, well, we've been fighting. They're there. We've been calling in airstrikes for the last 11 days. Here we go. Another airstrike. Yeah. You'd be destroying one of the holiest sites in all of Islam. And so we weren't allowed to do it. But at the time, after fighting all those days, like, they're right here. And then what did eventually happen is that there was a peace treaty-ish type thing done with the interim Iraqi government, where they came out, handed over their weapons to the Iraqi National Guard, and they got to fight another day after all that. So there are things like that
But do you ever take those moments, like, because I know those are somewhere in your memory bank, and think, okay, I'm going to change the scenario, but if James was there, like as a rogue, what would happen? Yeah,
I think if I go back to that particular scenario, I'd like to think that he'd be thoughtful about it, but figure out how to go round up that leadership coming out later. Maybe off the books. Yeah. Off the books later. Like, okay, we can't do this for X, Y, and Z. Hey, you make sure you get photos of everybody leaving there. Boom. And then work that into our target packages, and then go out and start just slaying.
A new list starts.
Something like that. Yeah. Something like that. So I think
it still happen.
Yeah. You never know. You never know.
I might have spurred something.
But yeah, could be. That might work its way into a future novel. But for me, it's mostly like the feelings and emotions behind those things that make it in. And I think that's what resonates with people, because that's something that if you haven't lived it, would be harder to, I think, create, because it wouldn't resonate in much, especially when people are in tune with the authenticity side of things. Right. So I think there is that. How about you guys? There's some things you look back on where you're like, man, I went left, I should have gone right.
Yeah, for sure. I'm still okay with the course. And I don't think it's mainly, I guess, there's probably more like people or relationships where you kind of think like, there was a red flag early on. I should have noticed. And it's, so for me, my value, or what's valuable to me, is time, and especially personal time with like friends. Yeah. And when I've gone into kind of deeper into a friend relationship with people that it wasn't a two-sided street to where it's like, it's a true friendship. I think I probably have some relationships that were more of a, I should have listened to my wife when she said like, hey, this guy, there's nothing that he communicates with me when you're not in the room that makes us feel like you guys are a partnership. This is like, you're going to take more to that table than, what's going to be given back type thing. And my wife has not been wrong on a lot of, anytime I've ever been stubborn on like, no, trust me, so-and-so's friends with them or whatever. Cause there's people that are very crafty at getting to know a friend of yours just enough to where that, like, you both start hanging, you both assume that you have a deeper relationship with this person and then eventually something happens to where you and a good friend get together and you're like, dude, I thought blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, the only reason I did that is because he told me blah, blah, Right. So I think those are things that if I could go back and get my time back from like one-sided relationships or friendships, I would probably love to have that. Because if nothing else, I would love to redock that as family time. Yeah. Like later in life, like if I could have it back, because now, time is the most valuable thing that I value right now.
Oh yeah. I weave that into the novels as well. Both,
well, it's definitely in there now. The last one, in the foreword of the last one, you like put the pieces together from the previous ones of now all of a sudden I feel like there's a counter. There's something that's ticking in the background of what all is happening through the book series. So that became obvious this last one more so than ever.
Yeah. Time is something that I've always been fascinated by. I've always been fascinated by watches, and I think that's because of the fascination with just time in general, knowing that once that second goes by, we're never getting that one back. And so I think that's just always been a part of me since I was a little kid. So it became very natural to weave that into the storyline as well. But I think we should always, if my wife tells me now something like, hey, I got a bad feeling from that guy, like I should not even follow up with a question or nope, I should just be like, Roger that. Boom. And let's save that time. Let's save that breath. And she's going to be right about it. That intuition. There's been a couple times.
Yeah. I think if I looked back at things I should change, it's probably everything I told Sharon. It's going to be fine because if you have a really good wife that is literally your soulmate and your partner, their antennas are hypersensitive to like protecting you too. Whereas I think you're like, I'm trying to not have a defense barrier around. I'm trying to be very, open and trying to think of the right word. I want people to be able to like come up to me. I don't want to have that up. And I think when you have
approachable,
I want to be approachable 100%. And it's kind of hard to be fully transparent and approachable if you're also somewhat guarded on like thinking like, what's the initiative? But if you have the right wife, you've got the best intel.
If
intel,
the like, sensors,
if she's radioing into my ear saying like, hey,
exactly,
throttle down with where you're going with this.
Right.
So I have a question. Where did bow hunting start first for you or gun hunting?
I hunted first with a rifle.
Okay.
But I shot a bow first. I have a great picture from, I think I'm 5. Yeah, I'm 5. Yeah, in this photo, and shooting a bow, and it's awesome. It's old, 70s. It's 1970.
I didn't know it went that far back.
Yeah. So there's only one bow I think from my youth that I am missing, and I'm so bummed about it because I know exactly where we were when we did a little garage sale, and anyway. That's the only one that I'm missing. It was the one in my high school bow. I probably got it 8th grade maybe, but I had it all the way through high school.
What was it?
Still. And that's why, because I don't remember exactly. I don't know if I'm now just thinking it was a bear or if it actually was.
Yeah.
I can't, but I remember it was like mostly dark, but I remember the camouflage pattern on there. I remember exactly where I got it. And no, it was compound bow.
Okay.
Yep. And I wish I had it now to compare it to what we have today.
Yeah.
But I have a few. I do have my first compound, which is my mom dug it out of the attic not too long ago. So I do have that one, and I don't want to even touch it because I think it would just maybe. I just don't know. But at least I have it. It's an old faded yellow, and I gotta show it to you before you go. So I have that one, and then I have all the other bows since. But my picture is with a recurve. It's just a little plastic.
So
thing,
did your dad hunt?
No, he has hunted, but I wouldn't say we were a hunting family. We had his old 30-30 that he got in the 50s out of a pawn shop when he's 12 years old or something like that. I still have it today. Got a mountain lion with it here in Utah a couple of years ago. That's top of mind because I didn't ding it up too much, but still it was freezing out there, and we have snow machines, and there's dogs, and you're in and out of trucks, and going over these mountains and all that stuff. And I just kept thinking I just wanted to protect this rifle the whole time because of its history. So just yesterday I got 2 others just arrived of pre-64 30-30s, same type, but I had a guy, Nelson Ford in Arizona. He looked him over and tuned him up a little bit and just sent him out here. So I just picked him up yesterday, which is why that's top of mind. But so we always had guns around. Had that 30-30, had an old 22 from the 1920s, had the little Colt Woodsman, also 22. So we shot, but we didn't hunt as a family. But I was always in my backyard. I was on the roof. I was shooting down into hay bales because back then that first the recurve and then the compound bow wouldn't even go through hay bales back then because it was just it was so it didn't have that kind of power. Today would just sail right through. But
there
were
no
always
targets when I was a kid. It was a bale of hay. You would literally buy a bale of straw.
Yep.
At like the co-op.
Yep.
And then put a paper plate on it. That's probably 80
you didn't even have the old school multicolor.
I mean,
targets?
if I was lucky, but honestly, it was like a paper plate or like an empty can. Like that's what you shot. That's what I shot at. Yeah. So who was the hunting mentor part of your life then?
Yeah, that was just innate. I mean, when I was a little kid, I remember thinking I need to be hunting. Like, I wish we were a hunting family. Like that sort of a thing was just in my DNA.
What'd you watch? Do you think you watched anything? Do you think
I think it was
anything
movies.
Primal, set it off?
I think I just had that protector, that hunter, that service gene or whatever in my DNA. Like it hadn't been diluted, and I didn't let it get diluted along the way. I just embraced it. And so I think it's always just been a part of me. And I think I naturally gravitated towards stories, whether it was in Field and Stream or back in the day, like A Boy's Life, or even if it was just an advertisement in the back for like a rifle or a BB gun or whatever it was in the back. Soldier of Fortune magazine, of course, for back in the day. Movies that had this just primal element to it. So I just naturally gravitated to that stuff. I didn't watch Bambi, and I didn't get, I didn't think of it like that. I thought of it as, hey, hunting has been a part of even back when I was a little kid, hunting's been a part of the human experience since the beginning of time. I should be good at this. This is what it means to provide. So it was just a part of me. So I didn't have really a hunting mentor other than just like, let's say, for the military. I didn't know anybody in the military. But guess what? I watched First Blood, and I watched Rambo First Blood Part 2, and I watched Predator, and I watched all these World War II movies, and I watched Black Sheep Squadron with Robert Conrad flying a Corsair, which is the same plane my grandfather flew in World War II, and he was killed near the end of the war, but so he never made it back, but I had his pictures of him in his squadron. So I had these touch points, but that's why I think today it's so important who these kids follow, because if there was who I followed back in the 80s, that would be Stallone, it would be Schwarzenegger, it would be those types of people in popular culture. And so I think it's so important. They did have a big influence on me. Rocky was a huge influence on me. I don't know how many times I watched Rocky growing up, but what a great role model for a kid. Yeah. And today, man, who you're following, who you're scrolling past, who my kids are scrolling past, and we try to limit that stuff or try to keep them off TikTok and all that stuff. And our little guy who you just met, he's smart. he's smart. He gets around it. He figures it out, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, dang it, God, these kids are outsmarting us on this stuff. So anyway, that was a very long way of saying that I didn't really have a hunting mentor. But then when I got to SEAL Team 5 and became a sniper, they had just started up a sniper sustainment program. So once you made it through the school, got back to your platoon as a sniper, they wanted to keep those skills kind of up rather than do things other than just go to a range and just confirm your dope or whatever. Right. And so they started taking us on hunting trips. So that was 2000. So that was my first. I'd done a little bit before that, but I consider my first real hunt up in Washington State. And it was, I won't say the name of the place because I don't know if they really advertise it or not, but got to go up there and we set up all these different scenarios where you have essentially a 360-degree type of range where you're going in and shooting and hitting a target, whatever. But also they took us hunting. Yeah. And it was amazing. And I had this deer up there, and you're cutting off strips of this deer, and after you're hanging it in the tree and all that stuff, and throwing it on the grill, and it was just awesome. Yeah. Brought that back, shared it with my wife and our little place in Coronado, and then that I think was the beginning of actually doing it for real, not just like wanting to do it. And then September 11th kicked off not long after that, but the sniper sustainment continued, even though it was a little bit less because it was just go down range. So I kept hunting really with the teams. And then there were some organizations that would come in and say, hey, we heard you guys want to, your snipers need to hunt. Let's go out to Santa Catalina Island. Yeah. That was awesome.
Were you always 5?
5 to 7.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So you were East Coast for a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Historically, I guess the stories I hear, is it true that East Coast has better like weapons vaults for like you to pick and choose? Because
I don't know, because everything's pretty much in the system.
Because I think Andy said once he went DevGru, it was literally like shopping cart, like
they'll have different
going
things
through the armory, So if you had access to that, which you did. You've had access.
Well, I didn't have access to theirs, but I've had access to some cool stuff.
Well, definitely.
And our snipers had a cool little, like, let's say 5-6 different weapon systems that you had access to, which is pretty cool.
So during that time, awesome assortment. You had you had an arrangement. You had a salad bar of cool stuff you could play with every day with your job. Were there times where you're like, I want to go shoot a bow?
Oh yeah.
Even though you had that?
Oh yeah.
See, I love that about
100%.
I feel like your archery is kind of a gene in you as well, even though it's not like that was necessarily handed down directly. It really wasn't. My uncle liked it, so mine didn't come from my dad or my grandfather. The hunting side came from my grandfather, but then the archery side came from my uncle. So sometimes it's you think that the dad would always be the one passing that down. It's pretty common that it actually comes from outside of that direction, mentor, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the word you used earlier was a mentor, which is different. And mentor is not the father. The mentor is somebody different. You go back and look at the background to that word, but it did come before. Even growing up, I remember watching Robin Hood, and I remember they had these little books that would go along with Robin Hood. They were like kids' books, but it was pictures from like the Errol Flynn movie were in there, and so I loved that. When I graduated Buds, I told myself if I graduate Buds, my present to myself will be a bow. And so I went up to performance archery. Yeah, I still have it. It's I think it's over there. Yeah, it's right behind the desk over there. I'll show it to you. But it's a bear. And so when I graduated Buds, I went right up to performance archery, Bob Frome, and tried out a few different ones, and that one just felt right to me. So that's the one I went with. So my present to myself when I got it, and it was a lot back then. Like, I mean, it was probably just over $1,000 for everything, which is not that much now. When you try everything high end today,
at the time that was
at the time, especially if you're making like $300 every couple weeks, back then, it was a lot. But that was my present to myself was a bow.
So didn't you go to Balboa
to shoot? Yeah.
Is that where you were?
Yeah. So got at the bow with Bob from Performance Archery, and then go to that course that they had, which was really cool.
When was that? Like, what was your
97? Yeah.
How, and then once you were deployed, did you practice very much at Balboa?
It's very much when I could. Okay. So I go up there with my wife and with our daughter when she started. She got a bow as soon as she could. I should pull one back and went up to Performance Archery. Had Bob hook her up with one, and when she was little, when she was 6 maybe, and we'd walk around the course at Balboa, and it was just a cool spot because you don't expect there to be a archery course there. And you're like, wait, what? Right here?
Were
San
you there
Diego.
early 2000s?
Yep.
So I used to go out there because I was friends with Frank Zane, who was he's a 3-time Mr. Olympian. He was
Okay.
I
was thinking, yeah.
Okay, so Frank lived in San Diego, and we used to exchange like fitness for archery because he and Arnold used to shoot archery too. Like back at Santa Monica High School, I've got pictures of them shooting. And so I would go, and whenever I worked with Frank, I would shoot at Balboa. And I'd talk to a lot of you guys that are like, when we practiced, we were at Balboa. I wish I had pictures of like when I was out there shooting and training, because I wonder if we were ever like next to each other but never knew it.
Maybe on the course at the same time. That could be
pretty cool, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Like if we ever go back and find a picture where we're like practicing at Santa Monica, and then you know, here's you in the background with like your new
crazy
boat. Like that would be awesome.
That would be crazy. I think because that part I did it alone because I didn't know anybody else that shot back in the early, when I got in 97, when I got that bow after Buds. So that was really just me. And then we got married, and I'd go there, and you know, my wife would walk around with me, and I'd shoot a little bit. And then after we had kids and came back to the West Coast, then our daughter was at an age where she could shoot, and so we were out there then. I think some of those photos are like, because I don't think everything was in the cloud then. I think
I don't think
I think it was before. So it was like I still had an iPhone 2009, 10, but I don't think they were on the cloud. So there's like a few year period where I can't scroll back and find them because they were on like a hard drive. You had to like plug your phone in, and they would go there. So I think
pre 4 or 5, I think,
something like that. And so anyway, it's so there are some photos.
I had to keep all the old phones so that, because they're like on there, and they're probably like 4 megapixels.
Physically on there. Yeah. Seriously. So I think we do have a couple. I know I have a couple pictures, especially of my daughter down there from like 2000, let's say 9, 10, 11, 12.
That'd be awesome.
Time frame. But yeah, so I shot there, and then I brought my bow, that bow that's over there in the corner, on my first 2 deployments. But since one was before September 11th, so I took it to Guam, and I think I shot it a couple times. Where's the first deployment? Okinawa. So I shot it a couple times on Okinawa when we were actually there, because when you're before September 11th, you'd go to a place, and then you'd kind of leave out of there to go do training exercises in your area there. And so I brought it on the first deployment. I brought it on the second deployment, and that was in Guam, and then 2 weeks into that was September 11th. So we packed up and off we went. So a lot of my stuff stayed in my room. So the bow stayed in my room because we didn't know what was going on. September 11th happens. You're still kind of, where are we going? We're going to Afghanistan. Where are we going? And we packed up and went. So I'm pretty sure I left it in my room because I don't have memories of being in Kuwait or anywhere else shooting any. So I'm pretty sure I left it in the room. But yeah, so my intent was to always bring them on deployments.
Yeah.
But then I wonder if I brought one to Iraq. I should have, but I don't know if I did or not. I might have, but I think we were too busy to actually shoot. I think I got a hard case for it for an Iraq deployment, took it, and I don't think it came out of the case because I don't have any memory of actually shooting it because we were just go. And for me as a leader, I never like took time to do anything else other, like if there was free time, then I'm studying the enemy, or I'm looking at target packages, or I'm always doing. So I never took time, although it might have been nice looking back to shoot. And it'd be cool to have a picture shooting in Iraq. Dang it. But I wasn't thinking about that stuff back then. I was only thinking about the mission. But that's just how it goes. Navy Federal Credit Union. I've been a member of Navy Federal Credit Union since 1996 and have only had incredible experiences. Getting a new car is exciting, and you deserve a hassle-free buying experience. You can get a decision in seconds and enjoy great rates. With everything you need in one place, Navy Federal's Car Buying Center is your one-stop shop for researching, financing, buying, protecting, and enjoying your next car. You could search for new and used cars, access vehicle history reports, enjoy discounts on auto insurance, and more. And you can make the most of your time on the road wherever you go with our flagship credit card. Whether you're taking a trip to relax or see somewhere new, you deserve a travel card that does the work for you. The flagship credit card will earn you 3 times points on travel, plus up to $100 in statement credits towards TSA PreCheck or Global Entry, and a free year of Amazon Prime. With 2 times the points and all purchases outside of travel, the rewards don't have to end when your vacation does. For more on Navy Federal's car buying experience and flagship rewards, visit NavyFederal.org. Open to the armed forces, the DoD, veterans, and their families. Credit and collateral subject to approval. Navy Federal is insured by NCUA. Visa is a registered service, mark of Visa, used by Navy Federal under license. NavyFederalCreditUnion.org.
Does it seem surreal that, like, right now for archery or bow hunting, because I feel like you were probably the originator. Like, out of the SEALs I know, I feel like by what you're telling me, you were one of the OGs to actually be involved with archery. So now, is it kind of surreal to you that Jocko, Stump, Leif, Biss, JP Donnell, Gardner.
I mean, cool to see.
Everybody's like all in as a bow hunter. Like all in as a bow hunter. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
It is. And it's, of course, in my mind, I'm like, man, I don't remember them having a bow back in 97. No, it's quite, I love it. It's really cool. I think it's so therapeutic for guys, which is another reason I weave it into the novels for people that are reading it. And I've put in a couple sentences about it being therapeutic, about it being meditative, and it being helpful to people that are dealing with certain things from the battlefield, because I want more people to come to it. I want more people to come to archery and all those benefits. I remember in high school reading Zen and the Art of Archery. I think it was freshman maybe. It might have been 8th grade, but I know I read it in high school again at least. But I have my original Zen and the Art of Archery. I have a couple books about anything I could find on like a Japanese bowmanship or all that stuff from back in the day. Pictures of like samurai shooting bows and that sort of a thing, or like recreations, whatever. Maybe some black and white photos, but they're all stacked. I have these books from high school days of that. So I was always into it, but you couldn't just Google it. Back then, you had to go to the library, you had to go to a bookstore, you had to find in the back of a magazine an advertisement for some obscure book, and then send away for it, and then get it. And so I have most of those books still today.
It's weird. I look back at when I was a kid and like trying to consume products or whatever. Back when you used to have to like fill out an order form.
Oh, you had to put in the work
from a magazine. You have to like cut it out, fill it out, mail in a check. To then get something back.
Catalog, just to get the catalog.
Yeah, that seems so strange, but it was also so fun.
Yeah, I loved it.
Because you would open the mailbox every day. Like now I don't even want to open a mailbox. I'm like junk.
Oh, yeah.
Back then you were like, what's in there?
Exactly.
Close it up, felt like Ralphie, from like Christmas Story.
Fantastic. I love doing that, but it's also cool because it meant you had to put in the work. Nothing was just coming to you. You weren't just going to scroll and some algorithm was going to push something to you because it thinks you might click on it or you're going to like it. It wasn't any of that. You had to actually go. And we watched last night, for whatever reason, we watched War Games with Matthew Broderick. So we watched it with the kids last night, and he has to go do this research for this guy, Falcon, who created this kind of artificial intelligence computer thing that the government's now using. And now he's kind of left. He's on this island in Oregon, and Matthew Broderick has to go to the library, and he's pulling out the card catalog thing, and he's going through it. And our kids are like, "What?
What is that?"
Yeah, and he's going to the microfiche thing, and he's looking up articles and on some. I was like, look, kids, you had to put in the work back then. You didn't have to walk 5 feet and sit down at your computer or pull your phone out of your pocket.
Find microfiche.
You had to go.
You had to go find a microfiche monitor and like scroll around and like, okay.
Yep. You had to do the work. You had to put in the work.
Can I get a photocopy of this, please?
Yeah. So I like that. I like that you had to put in the work back then. Today it's kind of comes a little easier. There's that access to information is just it's different. It's different.
It made you more street smart. I feel like you could figure things out if there was a problem in front of you. I think you were a better problem solver. Whereas now, the way everything is in society, I think kids are smarter because they have instant education in any field. But I don't think kids would I think kids could pull over and Google how to change a tire. But I think when I was a kid, if I ran over a nail on the ramp that I was building in the backyard with like a 2x8 and a can and a paint can. I'm trying to build a ramp and I popped my tire. I was more afraid to tell my dad I popped this new tire. So I would then be like, I've got to patch this tire. And you would like take your tire off your bike and like pull the thing out. And like,
you couldn't Google it.
You really couldn't. You had like all those little things you just figured out as a kid. And a lot of it was like, I broke this. I don't want to like tell my parents, how do I solve the problem? I feel like at some point as a society, those people, honestly, it's like the farmers, like hardcore farmers are still super hard workers, but they also, you know, can look at something that's broke and figure out a way to like, oh, well, that tire's flat, but we can just like do this to get by. Like, you know, the make a quick adjustment and like jerry rig something to like make it work. And let's like, deal with this after we were doing this specific task. Those days, I think, unfortunately, will go away because some of these ranchers, some of these guides, some of these outdoorsmen, that salt, like once they're gone, I don't see there's so few people in line to take over that. I think it's going to be a gap in our society. For like,
I hadn't thought about that with guides in particular. Or maybe there's just fewer of them. Because once you get back there, let's say you're a Cole Kramer up in Kodiak and you're out there in the backcountry. Well, you're gonna have to figure some things out back there. So maybe there's just fewer of them.
We'll look at Cole. Like you and I both say Cole, but 40 years ago there was probably 20 Coles that did that kind of stuff. Now, like honestly, other than Cole, like I don't know anyone that's like a true Grizzly Adams type of a guide that lives that way all the time. It's becoming less and less and less and less. I mean, Cole probably has his mentors where he's just like, once these guys are gone, they're gone. And I mean, and Cole will fall in that same category too. You know, hopefully people start to pick that up. It would be valuable.
Oh man. But thinking back to that sending away, man, U.S. Cavalry was a catalog I look forward to getting all the time, but I think I had to send away for that one, U.S. Cavalry, and there was another one that kind of very similar, but it would have knives and camo and like all this. I love getting things like that. That was so much fun. But yeah, now all that's gone. There's no joy in going to the mailbox anymore. I'm like, oh geez, I gotta empty this box here and bring it home and drop it on the counter.
I used to have to like sneak to order fireworks. Like if you had that, I forgot, it wasn't like Phantom fireworks, but like I wanted fireworks, so you'd send away and get fireworks, or I wanted like Chinese. I
remember those ads. I never did that.
I wanted like Chinese stars.
Yes, I still have some.
And so I would order Chinese stars. And what's hilarious is you've got like your hatchet board back here. I 100% had like a piece of plywood where I like threw ninja
I did
stars.
Too. I did too.
But I had to order them through like a mail-in thing, and I was kind of like, hopefully they come when my mom's not home. You know, I don't want them to know I have these weapons or whatever.
That's awesome. Yeah. I shot that same board because it's softwood out there, so I can replace it. So it's hardwood. Or if you saw it, it's hardwood, and then there's softwood in the front, so I can just take those off and replace them fairly easily. But I didn't know any of that back then. Back when I was 10 or 11, and that same piece of plywood that you're throwing the stars at, I shot my bow into it once. And even with the low power stuff back then, I was not getting that thing out. That thing, I think I unscrewed it eventually, maybe. But yeah, that was not. I thought I'd just like go up and pull it out. I distinctly remember going up to it, and it was in there. Whatever, because it went through, because it was just up against the shed at our house. And so it was like into the shed, whatever, even the wood on the side of the shed, through the shingles, into whatever else. And I was like, ugh. So even at that age,
unscrew it, plug the hole. Don't let anyone know this happened.
Yeah, I was pretty obvious what was that. Yeah, because eventually I got a paintball gun, and so I was sighting the paintball gun in on that same piece of plywood up against the shed. So that was pretty fun to do that kind of early on in high school days. But what was your first hunt? I wanted to ask you what your first hunt was. And how old were you?
My very first hunt was in my grandfather's lap. He took me turkey hunting. Wow. He like took me out. I remember he we left the farmhouse, went down. Actually, the Natchez Trace runs right down the back end of my grandfather's property, which is on St. Catherine Creek in Mississippi, in Natchez, Mississippi. And he took me down there on like this foggy morning, and I was like sitting between his lap. I think I was maybe 7 or 8, and he was, had a box call, like an old, box call, and he sat there and was striking on this thing, and
nice.
and I hear like a gobble, and he's telling me to be quiet, and next thing I know, like out of the the fog and the mist, like here comes this like fan, and I'm like literally sitting in his lap, and he's telling me, look down the barrel and tell me when that bead is on that red head. And then, and I was, obviously he was probably, it's like teaching your kid to drive where you're like, oh yeah, you're doing it. But you're like, you got your hand underneath where they can't see. And then I just like, yeah, his head's right there. Boom, and then I like see this turkey and like the fan and the beard and this whole experience. And then I think the next year I went out deer hunting with, like an old Mossberg with buckshot. Like I remember shooting buckshot, and my first whitetail was down in Mississippi when I think I was 8. Oh, wow. And then I was bow hunting by 9. Bow hunting by 9, and I think I shot my first deer with a bow at like 10.
No way. What was your first bow? Or what did you shoot that deer with?
It was a red fiberglass, dude.
Just something like off the shelf,
like a long bow, some type of a recurve thing that I don't even know where I got it. And then my dad started taking me to local archery clubs and stuff in northwest Chicago suburbs, because we had moved to Illinois by that time. Okay. And so I went to all these Midwest like little archery clubs, and my dad would take me to shoot, but he wouldn't really nurture me on the hunting side. Yeah. My hunting side was all fed from going down to Mississippi for Thanksgiving and for Easter every year. We'd drive down, and my mom would see her side of the family we'd always have big Thanksgivings. Okay. And I remember like cleaning my plate and being like, can I go? Cause they, if after Thanksgiving meal mid-afternoon, if you totally cleaned your plate, you could go hunting, and I would just run out the back door, and I knew like where I could go to my stand. And what's weird is I would just grab a gun and go climb I had no safety belt. You'd go climb in this tree as a kid. Like I would never let my kid do that now. Right. But I just feel like we had no rules. It was just like, go out and, whether it was like gigging frogs or, squirrel hunting or whatever, like there was no
old school.
Yeah. There was no like, I don't know. No one watched you. You just, they just knew where you were and you were doing it. And then if they heard a gunshot from the house, they would assume that I got something, or I would walk all the way back from wherever those hunting spots were and be like, I got one, come help me.
Nice.
So that's kind of how it started. My DNA is Mississippi deer and turkeys. Okay. That's, and we ate from what we shot. Yeah. So it was a very different mentality.
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. Right before you got here, right outside the door, we have it's like 200 turkeys. And for this winter, last winter, they were here the whole time, and they go between like this one ridge up here, and they come down to this ridge on the other side, and then they go back. That's kind of their pattern every day. And that's how they did it all, not last winter, but the winter before. And then this one, they disappeared because it was such a bad winter, and we had so much snow up here. And I thought, man, they might be done. Like, I don't know, what do they do? I mean, it was crazy how much snow we had. And if it was the largest snowfall that Utah has had in recorded Utah history, then it's the first snow that they're seeing. They're experiencing like this. So I didn't know, because they're experiencing it for the first time like that, as
turkeys have a pretty short lifespan. So yeah, this is totally new.
Yeah. And so but then they came back. And I'm like, they must have found a barn somewhere down a little bit lower, a few thousand feet below us. And I'm thinking, because I don't know what they would do. How they would survive.
I think of a turkey's foot holding on those branches every night. Yeah. And I'm like, does their feet have no feeling?
Seriously. Yeah, they go up in these trees right behind us here. When the coyotes come out, you can hear them fly up there, but I thought the winter was going to get them, kind of like the mule deer. Yeah. But they're back. They're back. I think about the same numbers.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Same with the elk. I think the elk must have found somebody a little lower.
They could have went 100 miles away and wintered but they'll slowly start to trickle back to their natural like breeding areas here pretty soon. Okay. I think if your numbers were down, well, this happened on a ranch we both know. Their antelope population really changed for like a 2-year window. Okay. Because the winter got so hard, they migrated across the Utah side into the Wyoming side, and they just kind of never filtered back fast, but now over 3 years, they've filtered back.
Okay.
But it's not, they went where they could thrive.
Yeah.
And then they're slowly trying to get back to, I think, their natural, instinct of like where home is. But sometimes I don't think that just happens because of the season change. I think it's a migration that sometimes is fast out of necessity to live. And sometimes it's slow because they were pushed out and now they're like working their way back.
Yeah. I'm thinking that just the elk being more robust, because there's visually seeing the elk now back. I think they're fewer, but there's still, there's a lot of them here.
Yeah.
But mule deer, totally noticeable. There are less mule deer here this year than there were last year at this time.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. So even if they went somewhere, I think even where they went must not have been the greatest spot for them. That's what I'm thinking anyway.
Well, I've heard the vehicle collision on mule deer was like the highest ever along, because they were just getting smoked because they were trying to get down into the valleys.
Okay.
What do you think the importance of archery is to the veteran community? Because I know you're throwing nuggets to people in the book series, which I really appreciate, because a big focus of ours as a brand is, our relationship with Black Rifle, Kill Cliff, the whole veteran side of the community. Jocko obviously helps us tremendously and stuff. And I feel like that message is getting out. I think it got out there really strong during COVID because people were stuck at home, and that message really got out there. And what I don't want is that to like the accelerator be let off that focus, because I think it's so critical for the veteran community to like be able to find something to where they've got the mission, they've got a loadout, they're trying something hard. Most of you guys are competitive to where like archery isn't, since you're under load. Andy described it to me one time. I said, what do you think the real difference is between archery and, when you were a sniper and stuff? And he's just like, well, the difference is archery, you're under load. So even if your technique's awesome, you're like, it's not like you're shooting a rifle where you have to hold back this hammer, and you're having to hold that and then go through your techniques of making this 1 mile shot or whatever. You're literally trying to like disperse yourself like, melted, a melted person, to where all your weight's distributed right, and you're able to just make these clean shots. Whereas with archery, you've got to like hold the load and make all that stuff happen at the same time. So I think the challenge naturally draws so many of you to it. Yeah. But do you think the therapeutic part, do you think we should do more of a job as a community to like make sure that is staying relevant, making sure that veterans know the importance of what archery can do?
Yeah, I think a couple of years ago, you're right, when Black Rifle was all in on Total Archery Challenge and doing the veteran shoots. And did they not do one this year? I forget.
Right, yeah, the adaptive thing didn't
I think that was big just because you're seeing people missing both legs that are out there on beautiful course. Yeah, on these beautiful courses and holding back these bows. Some guys with their teeth because they don't have the arm, and around other people that are everybody's having a great time. There's this community. And when you're on that bow, there are very few things in life where you're in the moment and like on the edge of a plane where you're about to ramp, when you're about to jump, like that's one, at least for me, it was. I'm not thinking about anything else. You're not like, did I leave the iron on? You're on that and you're going and you're thinking, for me anyway, if this chute doesn't open when it comes time to pull, I have to go through procedures to then either cut away or untangle or whatever. What are those procedures? And as we're going up, I'm thinking about those things. Because for me, it wasn't just like second nature. But for Andy, it might be. Maybe he doesn't think about that because he's done it so much. But for me, I was always going through those procedures in my head. And then you get to that ramp, you're not anywhere else. Like you're right there. And I found that same feeling at the top of a rapid in a kayak. Same thing. Like you're right before you're about to drop in, like you're not anywhere else. You're right there. And there's nothing else distracting you because there's no phone, there's no computer, there's nobody else. It's just you, top of a rapid, and you're about to go in. Maybe you scouted it ahead of time, and so you're maybe thinking about that stuff. But as you go in, you're there. Yeah. That's where you are. Same thing with archery. When you're back, you're right there. You're not thinking about anything else for whatever reason. I think it's just very natural to not think about anything else when you're here, when you're doing this, and you're just you're maybe thinking through your steps or your points of performance at the beginning. But once you've done it so much, you're there, and they're not thinking about anything else except that shot. which is pretty cool. So I think for veterans and for anybody, but for veterans, because we're talking about them, that's a very special thing to be associated with, and of an outlet or a thing that you can do to not be thinking about anything else, to be right there. And just because it's so meditative, it's calming.
Yep.
Which is really, really cool, really special. There's very few things out there. Maybe yoga, if you're into yoga or something, I don't know. But archery for me is, I'm not anywhere else. And I don't have to get in a plane to go feel it. I don't have to like take the kayak out or the raft out to some river I can go in the backyard, and you can also do that pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
Not anywhere, but there's a lot of places where you can go and you can shoot archery a lot more than where you can go and shoot a rifle. Boom. You're right there. You're in that shot. And so I think that's for veterans in particular, but for anybody, really, it's so beneficial.
Jocko said the biggest thing for him was the quietness. Like when he shot archery the very first time, I said,
I remember we were there.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, so what, like, how do you describe it? And he's just like, it's like quiet. He's like, it's like, he's like, I'm used to me shooting and doing all that stuff, but this is a quiet type of, training type thing.
Yeah, it's peaceful. I mean, it is. I mean, you're right there. You're right. I love it. Absolutely. I've always loved it my whole life. I've always just obviously gravitated to it, but I've always had that same feeling. Maybe not at 5 years old. Maybe you're just like, I don't know. But my memory of it is always being very calm and being nowhere else but in that shot.
Yeah. See, the hunting side of this is what lets me enjoy that feeling, because so much of my life, I would say, more than 3/4 of every single day is teaching archery and trying to give free content and trying to give our community one little tip that can help them, give them one thing to work on this week, or one tip, or, hey, here's a student I had in this. I'm so focused on trying to help everybody else out through our platform that sometimes when you're doing it all the time, what you really loved about it, you don't really get to enjoy for yourself anymore, because you're putting everything you have into making it enjoyable for everybody else. So there's that nucleus of what really made me want to do it when I was a kid. On the competitive side of archery, I feel like it's work for me, because I'm really working to try to help everybody else out.
Yeah.
Now, when I go hunting, that brings me back to the roots of what I really loved about when that string lets go and you are 100% all of your senses are in tune, and you can literally see that arrow in slow motion and everything that mattered in that hunting moment. It brings me back to, this is why you as soon as you're in that hunting moment, it's this is why my whole life is based off this.
Right.
It's always been for the hunting side, and then honestly the education side. I love seeing someone get better. I love teaching veterans, because the amount of them that look at me and they're like, you don't know how bad I needed this. It's almost every time. It's every time to where once they do it, they're like, this is cool. This is going to be part of my routine. Right. Something, because we all have hobbies, but there's a lot of hobbies that you pick up to where you might put it back down and you just never do it again. You're like, I tried it. It was cool. With archery, people freaking love it. And the amount of people where they're like, I did this in high school, or I did this at Boy Scouts, or I did this at 4-H when I was in junior high, and I've never done it again, but I loved it when I did it back then. It seems like that's such a common thing with archery.
Yeah, and you've done so much for it. There's nobody else that's done as much for archery as you have over the past decade. When did you know archery was going to be, not just a passion, but your life, your profession? When did that click?
When it clicked that it was definitely going to be engulfing the majority of my life is when I went to the first ever tournament. It was a competition, and I didn't know that it was going to be one. I actually had kind of hurt my knee. I was
from football?
Yeah, I had kind of sprained it, so I didn't go to this early spring training.
Because you were big into football.
Yeah, I was going to go play college football. And so this was in the summer right prior to me starting the college football, and I decided to not go to the early like camp because I'm like, I'm still feeling this thing. So I was staying close to home, and I had a Mazda B2000 SE5 single cab truck, and it had a flip forward seat, and my bow in the case, and at that time it was more or less like a sock that had a big zipper on it, like those old first cases. That was always behind my seat because I just like to think that I was a deer hunter, even though I only went 5 days. I'd go during that Thanksgiving week at Mississippi, then I'd get to turkey hunt during the springtime. So I'm like, I actually went up to Wilmot Mountain, which is where I worked. I did dishes and stuff.
What's Wilmot Mountain?
It was a little ski hill in like northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin.
Okay. And
I worked in the kitchen doing burgers so that I could have a free ski pass because I loved skiing.
Nice.
So I'd gone up to Wilmot to ask them, hey, can I have a job when I fly back for just like my college? Like if I only come home for 3 weeks for college, I was trying to like negotiate, can I get this free ski pass if I'm only working 3 weeks out of the entire winter type time?
What'd they say?
I think they said we'll make it work. Because honestly, I always worked hard. I didn't like other people around me. Like if we were washing dishes, I would like try to wash more than the guy next to me. Type thing. So for whatever reason, when I was going home, there was a construction on the main highway, and it was only a 2-lane, like country highway road type thing from Wilmot to Johnsburg, Illinois, where I lived. So I took this detour and went through this small little town called Ringwood. And on this side street, there was like a plywood sign that just said archery shoot and had an arrow pointing down the driveway. So I'm like, what the heck is that? I turned in and I went to this shoot, and it was a 3D shoot. Now I didn't know there were like 3D targets. They had just came out, and there was like 10 ring, 8 ring, 5.
Okay.
So I went out there, didn't have like binoculars, none of that. I just had like hand me down stuff.
Yeah.
And I paid like $20 to like shoot this course, and it like was brand new to me. I had no idea this existed.
Yeah.
Well, halfway through that course, I had lost every arrow, and it's probably like people who come here and think, I shoot archery, I'm going to go shoot a tack. And then all of a sudden you're coming down the mountain. You're like, I'm leaving this thing halfway through because I have no arrows left.
Exactly.
So I literally left Ringwood, Wisconsin, turned out of that driveway, drove north up to Wilmot, Wisconsin, which is where like one of the first Gander Mountain outlet malls, outlet stores were. I went there, literally use like my very first credit card that I got because I had just got a credit card to go to college.
Okay.
And I bought arrows.
Nice.
And honestly went straight back to the shoot. By then the shoot was done, but I'm like, can I go finish? Because I was ingrained with you finish what you start. You always finish what you start. Don't quit. So I went back, and even though the tournament was over, I shot the remaining targets.
Nice.
And then the next day I was in the shop, which was called Gat Guns. They're in like Dundee, Illinois. All the people that did good, they had like polo shirts on that said like Gat Guns shooting staff. And so I was in Gat Guns Monday morning, and I was just in there just watching this archery, which was, I didn't know there were archery shops. I didn't know there was like cool targets. I was looking at like fiber optic sites. Like I was seeing I was like, this is the coolest thing. Because, as far as I knew, the bows that I got, like that was it. And I hadn't even been taken to an archery shop ever before. So next thing I know, I was in there that day, just honestly stalking people, just like watching people. And the manager of this place came over, and he's like, kid, what are you doing? And I just said, I'm just watching. And he said, come here in the back. And he took me in the back, and he said, listen, I was supposed to do these arrows for this customer. He's like, I'm going to show you how to do this. Will you do these arrows? And I just said, yeah, show me what to do. So next thing I know, I started doing these arrows, and I like came out an hour later, and I go, okay, here they are. And he's like, these look awesome. Start on these. And so over the course of like 2 weeks, I was just showing up at this archery shop, and this manager was just like teaching me to fletch arrows, and that was really all I was doing. And he was handing out some paychecks to employees that worked at this facility. It was mainly a gun shop, but the upstairs was all archery. And I said, hey, do you think I could get a paycheck? And he just said, he like looked at me and he goes, kid, you can't put a value on what I'm teaching you. And I said, well, I can't put gas in my tank to come here if I'm not getting paid. So he literally said, if you want to work here, I'll offer you like a full-time part. It's $4.10 an hour. It was $4.10 an hour. So I left college, essentially bailed, to pursue archery because of how bad I was at it. I had to get good. The fact that I knew I sucked that bad just made me like go all in. And then honestly, from that day, fast forward 12 months later, I was shooting at a world championship. I had qualified like at a local thing to shoot an IBO world championship, drove out to Flatwoods, West Virginia.
Not sponsored at this point.
No,
just your own stuff.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. I was driving that Mazda B2000 truck, had a Coleman tent. I bought it at Walmart, $19, slept in the tent, did this tournament. And then honestly and out of 400, I remember my first like world championship as an amateur, I barely broke 300. Okay. I mean, that is as bad as you could get. 18 months from that day, I turned pro.
That's wild.
So during this during this 18-month window of my life, I went full throttle into something that I sucked bad at, that I had to, because I was very athletic. I could really pick up anything naturally and do it better than, if I played on any kind of sports team, I was going to be on a varsity team. That's just like, it didn't matter if it was even a sport I didn't like. That I was just athletic. I sucked at this, and it really bugged me. And then once I got in and I started to get good, well, then I got competitive with myself, because I'm seeing my scores go up, but I also know where the bar was. Okay. And I'm like, I don't want to let off the gas till I at least know I'm good at this thing. Okay. And so I was like, at that tournament showed me a new bar of archery, of like, this is actually how good you can get at this. Wow. And then and honestly, I went to some of those events, and I ended up helping other I would help out manufacturers when I'd be there. And Matthews was setting up a booth at one of these things, and they were really behind. Kind of like us when we go to most tags, we're like scrambling to get our booth up. And I ended up saying, hey, what do you guys need? What do you need to help out with? And so I just started helping. And next thing you know, like that next week, Matt McPherson called me, and Matthews was very small, maybe like 20 employees at the time. Okay. And said, I loved your interaction with people, and I'm hiring some sales reps. I want to hire some sales reps. We're trying to grow. And so, yeah, literally at 18, during 18-month window of time, I went from being probably one of the worst amateurs there, like last on the page of results at this first world championship, to then, working internally at Matthews, being a Matthews pro shooter, winning rookie of the year, it was crazy. If it would have been nowadays where that was on social media, people would have been saying, how is this guy this bad? And then now he's on like a pro level. And so for me, everything I teach, I don't teach what I learned from what I read. I teach based on what got me better from all the mistakes I made. Yeah. So my whole method is based, like, when I see people struggle, I know why they're struggling, because I was bad at that same thing. So I can be like, hey, here's what your mind's thinking, right? And they go, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, you're trying to do this, but here's why it's not working, because you read this and you're trying to do this, but you're missing this little element of it. And so as my platform grew personally, like as I got more successful as a shooter, it started to build the platform for me to be able to teach. And I started out as a writer. I don't know if you...
I didn't know that.
So the very, kind of before Nock On Archery. I had a website, dudleyarchery.info.
Okay.
And
.info.
Yeah.
I didn't even know there was a
.info. Someone took dudleyarchery.com. I've actually bought it back now. But at the time, I wrote like 250 pages a year for 7 different archery federation magazines. So I would write archery techniques, and I had translators in different languages. So like, you know, Antoine would translate all my articles to French, and then I would distribute them to like, you know, Tir l'Arc and, you know, like Le Chase. And so I wrote for, you know, the Spanish Federation, the Italian Federation, and the German Federation, and England.
Are you still at Matthews at the time? Are you still professional?
Yeah. Well, at that time, I started writing my rookie season. I actually got a column there was a magazine out that was called 3D Times, and it was a magazine specifically for 3D shooting, and it had it was almost like a yellow pages where it had the dates of every archery shoot in every state. So every 2 months when you'd get this, you would open it up and you'd be like, okay, I'm in Illinois. Here's all the shoots. All the clubs would submit their club shoot dates to 3D Times magazine. Well, I'm just a people person. I interact well. So I was at these venues as a rookie or as a semi-pro first. So I was an amateur, sucked, went semi-pro, like just went in head first, went semi-pro, did pretty well. And right before I went pro, this magazine, the editor of this magazine, her name was Leilani. She said, would you like to write a column called Rookie on Tour? Because she knew I was like living out of my car going to these shoots.
It's a great idea.
Because I was too young to rent a car. You know, I couldn't rent cars. I would fly to shoots, and I would sit on my bow case at the luggage carousel. And when someone else would show up with bow cases, I'd be like, hey, are you guys going to the ASA over and blah? They'd be like, yeah, kid, jump in.
Wow.
That's how it like started.
Yeah.
So Leilani asked me to write a series called Rookie on Tour. So I started writing a series based on like what I had to do to go to an event, and like how I shot and I scored, and what my goals were going to be for the next tournament, and what I would work on and how I would do it. So that's how my writing started.
Did you keep those magazines? You still have them?
Oh yeah, I still have them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I still have them. So then as I wrote, because the magazines didn't like get to all my friends, I started dudleyarchery.info.
Okay.
And so
what year is this? Are you an early adopter here on the internet?
98.
That's early.
Yeah, 98. And so what I would do is I would write for free. And my agreement with all the publications was that I would write for free as long as I had full rights to the images that I used in my articles. They had to only be mine. And so my images were images I would take, which were images that did well for my sponsors. And so I was always giving free information to the consumer, but it was really what I was giving, the exposure I was giving to the manufacturers, what fed the free information to the dealer. That's how it started. And so then what I did was I made a deal to where I would write for free, submit photos for free, and just give them free content. But after 3 months, they would provide me with the PDF that I could then put on dudleyarchery.info.
Nice.
So all of my writing in all these languages were available in this spot. And, you know, and then honestly, that's where it all was until we've now recreated a lot of this digital where it's visual, digital, it's not writing. I actually want to get all my writing back onto our platform. And then we just put a huge investment for Nock On Archery, my wife Sharon, and honestly, she's like, everything you do, your people want to know. Like, it all has to be brought forward. So we really worked hard to develop a website that allowed us to have the store where our products were.
Right.
But more importantly, there's actually a WordPress side of our website that just, it's it's so awesome, and people really don't utilize it to their capability because I think they're just so used to, going to YouTube and like searching something. But on our website, we've got a whole, you can go in there and be like School of Nock, and you can look at like equipment reviews. You can look at like technique. You can look at like, how to work on your bow. You can go through School of Nock seasons. You can.
It's so great, your website. Is it nockon.com or Nock On Archery? I forget.
Nockonarchery.com.
Nockonarchery.com.
So there's all that, and but it all originally started with dudleyarchery.info, and it was me just giving as much free information as I could to the industry or to the community. But that exposure in all those languages and everything was so valuable to the manufacturers that the manufacturers started supporting me, and them supporting me is what it was the fuel for me giving back to the industry. So there was like a 5-year window of time, dude, where just all of a sudden it became very apparent to me that like archery is part of my life, and it's a God-given. This is like beyond me. This is like a gift. This is what I'm meant to do because my success with it, I'm not really sure like why I should be good at pulling a string back and letting a bow go. I don't really know why I should be good at like talking the fundamentals about all this stuff. So I'm not 100% why that was my calling, but during that window of time of when I sucked so bad I could not finish a tournament, and my personal competitiveness made me go back and finish, made me go into that archery shop the next day to like watch the ones that are good and try to figure it out on my own. And then, that lady Leilani saying, "Hey, will you write this rookie on tour column?" Because, dude, I barely graduated high school English. And honestly, I wouldn't have graduated if I wasn't a ball player. There's no way, because I don't remember anything. The one thing I remember, I told someone about this 2 days ago, because they're like, "I love when I find your writing. I actually love, like, it's so simple for me to like process it." And I go, "You know why it's so simple for you to process it?" And he goes, "What?" And I go, "The only thing I remember about English class," as I said, I remember as a freshman, one of my first assignments was how to write a story. And they gave us the outline, and they said, "Okay, you have one paragraph as your intro to where you have to, the first 2 sentences grab attention. Then with the following sentences, you should outline what they are going, give them a teaser of what they are going to read in the next chapters. And in those sentences, stress the subtopics of your content. And then those subtopics, keep them, here they are. You laid them out in your intro, and then build a conclusion that finishes the attention grabber." It was literally like the basis of like how to write a story, but I remember it. And it said, then in your conclusion, you recap quickly what they need to do based on your subtopics, and then finish your attention grabbing thing in your final 2 sentences.
Dang, you remember all that?
That is literally every single thing I write. It is nice. That's all I remember. And if it weren't for spell check, no one could probably read it.
Spell check's very helpful.
Yes.
Unless it corrects it to something different than you really mean, which sometimes happens as you're writing.
And I was never, I was always like training. No matter what I did, I feel like I was always doing and training. So I never read a lot. I don't have a very broad vocabulary. And so I think when I give instruction, I am very like, I'm almost so simple like that, and I lay it out that way to where I think it just becomes easy for people. It's like almost dumbed down so much to where the information is very good, and people see immediate results. But it's just simple enough to where people can understand it. And honestly, that's how I like to consume new endeavors too. And the other thing is, I feel like I do things better if I know the why. So every single thing about our brand is, I always offer the why. Hey, we have this release. Here's why it's the best release. this is based on, decades of me studying this. This is based on a study that I did with the Australian Federation, where we used robotic hands and worked on the ergonomics of, what makes the cleanest release possible for like arrow flight and string path. And,
how do you start people off? Do you start them off with if someone comes to you, do you hand them a silverback or you hand them a Nock to it? Or what do you hand them?
100% silverback and a shot trainer.
Yeah. Because I started with the Nock to it, so I love it. I know.
But you understand trigger. See, like imagine if
someone's just like tink instead of.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. See, I feel like if there was a trigger system in a gun that forced snipers to trust the float more, and it was like a full surprise, I personally feel like there would be a whole nother level of that accuracy that would come forward, because non-anticipation of the shot is really what separates the cream of the crop in archery from the people that just never can get to that level. It is 100% trust in the front pin and trigger control, and like, unanticipation of when that's going to go off. It's like I go through this process and then this shot executes when I do all these things, and it needs to be a surprise.
I feel like if I started with if you handed me the silverback like a long time ago, then I would have just kept it and done that. But I had the Nock to it right off the bat, and I do like having, I don't know, in my head I do. For me, I love the Nock to it. I just think it's awesome. So that's what I use. But I also realize that hey, if you'd handed me a silverback, and did it come out after the Nock to it?
Yeah. Yep.
Like if I had that one first, then I'd probably still be with that one.
See, originally the silverback actually wasn't the silverback at the beginning. So this went back to, I was coaching the Indian team. So I was in India for an extended period of time. And
how long were you there?
Probably about a month.
Okay.
And I remember prior to me going, I knew that they were trigger anticipators because I had studied them shooting. And so I came back and I told Jerry Carter, Jerry was like my very first, he was my very first sponsor, because Jerry actually would rent the car and let me drive him around. That's how I got out of living out of my car at shoots, was Jerry Carter, and I had to sit in his booth and help him sell releases. So that's how that started. So I told Jerry, I said, I need something to where when I'm teaching these teams, they don't have the ability to set the trigger off with their thumb. I want to just teach pull. Like I want to just teach dynamics. You keep pulling. You have to be on the target. Your pin has to be on the target, and you have to be dynamically pulling through the shot, and all of a sudden it's a surprise. And he's just like, well, we might be able to do that if we take a release, put a spring in it to where the spring is heavier than the holding weight. And then we ended up making a release that way. And I once I told him, like, here's how I'm going to teach with this product. I said, this is going to create a whole new evolution to learning archery. So the original was called the Evolution. And I went out and filmed a DVD literally like a mile down the road from my home at like a local archery shop out in their little archery range to the side of this building. I like filmed this, how to shoot an evolution release, and I said, this will be the whole new evolution to archery, because it was a whole new training principle. And so this started, and I went to India and I took 10 of those evolutions and 10 pieces of string on a grip.
Yeah, the same thing that I have.
Yes. And so I took all their bows away.
I love that thing.
And I made them shoot. I taught them shot execution, shot process, and kind of reprogrammed them and just said, this is how you shoot this release. You don't know when it goes off when you execute a perfect shot. And so they just trained on releases and strings for almost a week. And then I gave one of the what happened was I started saying, okay, I rate my shooting not based on my score that I turn in. I either make a perfect 10. I learned what a 10 was. This will go back to another and remind me, like, there's only 2 steps to a perfect archery shot. Okay, but I learned what my 10 was, and so what I did was I was teaching these students, your shot isn't, there's no goods or bad. Like it doesn't matter the score. You either execute a perfect shot based on the system that I'm teaching you, or you didn't do something right about it, and that's fine, but don't check it as a good shot. So when I'd come off a pro range and people, there's 40 targets, people would say, how you shoot today? I'd be like, I had 38 good ones. That's how I talked. I might be last on the shooting list, but if I executed 38 good shots and they just didn't land where I needed them to, I didn't judge myself based on score. I judged myself based on technique. So I was teaching this, and we used to shoot 36 arrow passes for like FIDA competitions. You'd shoot 36 arrows at 30 meters, 50 meters, 70 meters, 90 meters. But usually those passes would be 36 arrow passes. So like a perfect world record would be a 360. And at the time, the female world record at 70 meters was 352. So that would have been 8 arrows off out of 36. So we were executing with these strings, and I would have people just like point down at 70 meters, and they would go through the process and pull, and it would just go off, and this string would just fall to the ground. Yeah. But I'd have them write down, did I shoot a 10 according to how I rate myself? Yes or no? And this one female who was actually number 3 on the team, she came forward to me twice and said, sir, 32 out of 36, like perfect shots. So I said, okay, can you go grab your equipment? This was on the 6th day. I bring this number 3 ranked female to the line at 70 meters. And I said, I want you to now shoot based on what we're talking about. None of us are going down to the target, but you're going to shoot 36 arrows. So the entire team sat there while she would go through this process, let off her safety, she'd pull, execute. She'd like turn to me, close her eyes, and she'd say, it was a 10. And we went through, and sure enough, she did 32 good shots out of a 36 arrow pass. And I was the one going down, pulling the arrows. I wasn't, And so I grabbed that target, and I brought it back. And she had just shot a 356, 70 meter practice round that would have been a new 4-point world record to the females. Wow. And I said, this is based on execution. You shooting a 10, your 10, not everyone else's, yours. And so that actually came down to a basic principle that a coach had said to me one time, but I never really understood it. It was more or less said as a joke, but I applied it. So there's 2 steps to perfect archery. Step 1 is learn to shoot a 10. Okay. Step 2 is repeat step 1. Nice. That was
got to make it into a book. We're going to put that in the series. If we make it to Savage Son,
I paid for that. I paid a coach I paid for coaching when I was an amateur, and I paid a guy for a couple hours. And that was the base of what I got. First, you learn to shoot a 10. So now I've expanded on that, and I actually start my entire, if I work with a student, like clean slate or Jocko or whatever, first thing I write on my board is there's 2 steps to perfect archery. Step 1 is learn to shoot a 10. Step 2 is repeat step 1, right? Yes. But then I say, but here's the thing. There are exceptions to this rule. And so then what I do is I go on to, especially people that are in the archery community, I go on to explain the exceptions, which I'll name names, and they're names that they're like elites to archery. They're amazing. They're also gifted. And what I kind of relate it to Tiger Woods. I said, okay, listen, Tiger is an exception. When everyone tried to make his drive, his swing, look like the swing that everyone says this is the most efficient swing, when those swing coaches tried to change his swing, his game went back because he was naturally gifted, right? I'm naturally gifted. There's certain things that I can do, but there's also there's shooters that have terrible form. They'll, well, how come this guy can lean back so far, but you tell me I can't? I'm like, okay, this is the exception. That person has learned to shoot their 10, and they are so good at repeating step 1 that they've mastered archery. However, The majority of the populace they are not the exception. So in that case, they have to have a systematic approach that makes their body in a repeatable position. And then they have to have a checklist of making an archery shot to where that process is also repeatable.
Yeah.
And I said, so with that, I'm here to tell you, I'm not an exception and you're not an exception. And I had to learn on a technique that was based on recurve archery that puts the body in a fundamental position to where you are able to repeat the same exact shot using this mechanical device. So I'm like, and then I work with the string and I work with the silverback. And when I see them, and then I'll give them a bow eventually after some time. And when I'm shooting with them and I see that first time where they're like, whoa, that one felt. And I'm like, I can see when they shot their 10 and I'm like, okay, so now this is your 10. You just experienced when I shoot and you watched me shoot, that is now the bar of you judging yourself on whether you shot a 10 or whether you maybe scored a 10 but got by, with not proper technique. But for me, that's the new bar.
Yeah.
So when I shoot or when I practice based on how many times have I executed the exact thing that I know makes perfect archery. And that's what I base my shooting on. And that's what I try to do through my teaching is here's methods that simplify, and I'm trying to help people find their 10. And I'm also trying to tell people, like with the silverback, that thing teaches you almost equally what's good about a shot, but when you break down why it's so hard, because if you don't do it right, it's hard. But the thing is, don't ignore that, because if you actually clean that up, the rest actually is easier. You're putting a Band-Aid over the real problem. And when you like give way and you submit to that problem and be like, you know what, this evil thing, this target panic or this anticipation rears its head because I'm trying to shoot someone else's. I'm worried about the prize and not the process. See, I judge myself on the process and not the prize. And honestly, like from some of the psychology books that I've like studied on sports psychology, it really comes down to like, from what I've read, there's really two different types of mentalities in sport. There's ego driven and there's task driven. I'm very task driven. I'm 100% okay losing a tournament knowing that I literally executed a perfect shot. And if someone's only watching me on TV, they're like, man, that guy looks smooth when he shoots. Because I'm striving for that.
Yeah.
If the wind blows this arrow a little bit off, or if I'm like darting around and I'm fighting the elements, I'm just like pull through and execute a good shot. I want to be able to go home at night and know that I didn't anticipate a shot. I didn't punch a trigger. I didn't cheat myself by like letting a moment dictate the quality of like this craft that I'm just like trying to hone. So that's really what I try to portray through our brand. Is, the importance of like understanding what a good shot is. And when I go up to, and I watch people this weekend, I watched 1,000 people shoot.
How many over the course of the last few months have you watched shoot at Total Archery Challenge?
Well, this year I haven't counted photos. I know last year I have photos with over 12,000 individuals.
It's
wild, right? So, and I always tell people, I'm like, I don't look at where your arrow lands. When I watch you shoot, like if someone just did everything I said and like made a good shot, they could blank the target. And I'd be like, you know what? Congratulations, dude, to make a shot like that in front of me. And I know you're nervous being here in front of me. That's a huge step. Congratulations. I wouldn't care if that thing like skipped off Bigfoot's head and hit a tree. If I watch someone like, on a step up with a silverback, and people do, they come up and, I'll see them draw back and they'll let off the safety and they're just pulling and it's probably taking a second or two longer because Dud's standing right there watching. All of a sudden it goes off and I see him just like, and I go, hey, that was freaking awesome. Thank you for showing me that. because everything we put forward and we put forward for free is to try to give you a moment where you can stand in front of someone in a high pressure situation and execute what you're taught.
And you're doing that over 12,000 times with people who come up. They're like, hey, let me see you shoot, Dad. Or like you have those competitions at the end of the day, or you're walking the course with a group or whatever else. Other groups come up or whatever. Or you catch up to somebody and everybody wants to see you shoot. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, because I actually, when I was flying here, you know what came up in my memories, like going back to this? Me, you, and Andy at Snowbird.
Right here, yeah.
At Snowbird, when none of us had officially sponsored TAC.
Yeah.
Remember, I was there for the Cabela's. I was there because Cabela's in Easton asked me if I would personally shoot their. They had like all the Cabela's black card members had or some of them. I think there were 20 of them that got to do that Easton experience where they went to the factory and all that, and then they said, what do we need to do? Well, they have certain days of my life because, you know, I've been with Easton for 25 years. So they said, will you come and shoot with these individuals and like teach them how to shoot every target? Like what you think about when you step to the stake, give them some advice while they're shooting. So I went to do that on day one, but I had told Andy like, hey, we can shoot this thing. And then you came out, remember?
I do.
And the three of us shot that time, and honestly that was before any of us were like involved with TAC.
Well, I'd gone a few years earlier with my daughter, so I'd met Barklow out there at Snowbird. I forget how many times they'd done it at Snowbird. So I just done it with my daughter and when she was young, and then with Barklow, just meeting him up there. And
well, then you had to have went to the very first one of the first few that Sean put on there.
Yeah, probably
because you would have been a year or two ahead of me.
Yeah, and then we linked up there, and it was just me, you, and Andy walking that course, and it was awesome. I remember I just flown back from somewhere, so got in super late, got up the next day, and then I had my what was it? It was the Sitka Pattern Prime Alloy, I think that it was, that I was shooting then.
Yeah.
And that was a blast. We had a great time. And then I think you zipped off to the airport right from there, and went home. But gosh, what a beautiful place. I love TAC. It's so awesome.
And I think what happened too was like you and Andy, when you shot with me, I think all of a sudden you had this new visual of, wait, we're not that good at this. Like, you know, because I'm sure the SEALs, because Jocko told me, he's like, listen, if we go to like practice pistols, it might be fun and games for like the first few, but like people are going to like go full throttle at some point. So I think with Andy, once he like, you know, lost an arrow or like I hit the 10 and he didn't, it just like lit this fire, like a competitive fire.
Right.
And I think that, you know, I think that's happened through all of our friend networks. Yeah. So now when we go out and listen, I have friends right now, and obviously mutual friends, where they can go out and learn and like go through the School of Nock and, you know, get this shot trainer and like a release, and within like months be as good as we were after a decade, because you started early like me.
Yeah.
I wasn't as good as some of like, we go to the adaptive shoot, like some of these adaptive people, they come in on like a Wednesday, we teach them archery, and then we're taking them on a course on Friday. Remember when we did that at Snow Basin?
Yeah.
At Snow Basin, they had never shot before we took them out. And
that was awesome.
They're shooting better in a day and a half than I think I was probably 10 years into like us, like taking our bows and shooting at bales of hay. Right. So it's so cool that learning curve has been, you know, it's not like this hard spike now. It's just like, man, short period of time.
There's nowhere to go. You didn't know where to go. I mean, all you did was like, okay, I pull this thing back and then I let go. And of course there's no releases back in the day. Introducing the PARD TD32 Multi-Spectral Riflescope, combining thermal and night vision for unbeatable performance. Effortlessly switch between daytime, night vision, and thermal modes with the picture-in-picture feature. Spot targets accurately with thermal and night vision precision. Hit your mark every time, day or night, with a built-in 1,200-yard laser rangefinder. Upgrade your shooting game with the TD32 Multi-Spectral Riflescope by Pard. I'm installing this on a rifle this week, and I'm fired up to give it a run. Go to pard.com to get your TD32 Multi-Spectral Riflescope today. Hey, when did you get your first release? Were there releases when you started, when you did that year-long deal between?
I would say 93. I remember I had like a Cobra. It was like a plastic one with like a plunger on the end, and you like kind of flipped. Do you remember?
Okay.
Do you remember ever seeing one of those? It kind of looked like. It kind of looked like one of those Alaskan knives.
Really?
Kind of like.
Okay.
But yeah, that was my first release, and then the first wrist strap release I got was more like a glove. Did you ever have the one where you put your thumb through?
It was always, no.
Yep.
I think my first release is actually over there, so we'll have to look at it after this and see what it was. But I remember it being a whole new. I never thought about that.
Yep.
I was like, oh wow, it was always just your fingers, and then you had the little strap with your little 3 pieces of leather or something like that, maybe 4, I forget. I think I still have a couple of those.
There'd be a hole through it. And then, it was like a 3-finger tab is kind of
exactly. Yep, exactly. But now, I mean, that's come a long way.
You know who's surprising at how they shoot? Chris is good.
Oh yeah.
Pratt's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't show pictures of him because obviously, a lot of our friends, I think we've got, we have some pretty cool pictures where they're personal, but there's been times where people are like, how is Chris? And I'm like, if you saw him shoot, you would know that he's like watched some stuff. He's got really good posture, and photos of people can, at least from my eyes, show efficiency very fast.
Right, you can tell.
And
you got the eye.
Yeah, and he's naturally athletic. too.
Yeah, he's a big boy and he's strong.
Yeah,
and hopefully we get some more archery into the next few seasons, especially if we go to and do a Savage Sun season or something.
That's when it's gonna really kick in.
Yeah, then we'll get to showcase that a little more, which would be awesome. But and then Matthew. So you did Matthew start sponsoring you and you start traveling the world? And how many bows when you travel would you do for competitions? Did you just have the one, or do you have a backup that you're traveling with, or what is that like?
So I started at Matthews when I was 18. I worked there for just under 10 years.
There's Matthews right there. I think the first one is Matthews right there.
And which was amazing because I started as a pro shooter because that was my rookie season as well. But I also started working as a manufacturer, so I was using vacation time to go shoot on the tour until I got like good enough where they were like, you need to be out shooting, especially after winning Rookie of the Year and then winning some titles. That they wanted me to do that, and then eventually I ended up making a U.S. team. I traveled to Croatia and shot with internationally, and when I was doing the bow count, I came back and I'm like, listen, we have no present. Like, we might sponsor some shooters over here, but we are missing a market. And so they just said, well, what do you think we should need to do? And I kind of told them. And because I was traveling for the U.S. team internationally so much, I was meeting these dealers, and I started doing seminars, and I started coaching other teams. And when I left Matthews, I was our international sales and marketing manager, was kind of my main title. Okay. And then when I left to go out on my own and start consulting for a lot of different brands, I kind of assumed Matt would, or, I say Matt, but Matthews would still let me be affiliated with Matthews. I actually didn't want to not shoot a Matthews. I wanted to just be more or less like a pro shooter that was external and let them sponsor me to be on my own. But I just felt like there were too many rules with me being internal at that point. And looking back, our company went from like 30 people to we ranked 500 twice. Wow. And, and we went through like the growing pains of a company of people abusing travel. And because I was under the umbrella, I traveled because I was competing. And so all of a sudden I like fell under this umbrella of a new HR department that comes in, and it was chains I wanted to cut off. And then it became apparent, like, if you're not going to play our way, then you can't play at all. So then I was forced to go on the market. And Hoyt knew they did not want to work against me. And they brought me in. They're like, we're not really sure what we're going to do. If you're like an independent, like what's your vision? And I just wanted to go out and like grow archery. And, and I honestly didn't have a vision. I just knew that I could do a lot of good things for a lot of companies. And Matthews had pretty much said, like, if you're not going to be internal, that's it, you're done. And so I left kind of having this really hard separation that one day prior, neither one of us knew was even a possibility.
Yeah.
And then I remember driving home and I was really upset, and Jerry Carter happened to call me, and he's like, and I said, I just left Matthews. And he's like, what? And I said, yeah, I just left Matthews. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Cause I mean, it was a very big salary. You know, I was doing some incredible sales numbers and competing. And at the time had like, I think I was like, had like a number 2 world ranking at that time internationally. Was just shooting. I was at the apex of my shooting career, technically. And then all of a sudden I'm just like cut off from what literally was the base of
not necessarily a bad position to be in.
Yeah. And so Jerry said, well, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I've got to figure out a way to pay my mortgage. You know, I said, I don't really know, but I've got like 2 months severance to figure it out. And so Jerry, I said, you know, I want to pay my mortgage. And I think it was like, you know, whatever it was. And Jerry goes, would you be willing to do what you did for Matthews for us? And he's like, April needs help with ad buys. She doesn't really know, like, we really need help laying out our ads. She, you know, she doesn't know like where's the proper place to put these things. And, you know, we need some help with like pro staff. And I'm like, he goes, can I just hire you as like a consultant and you do that for Carter and help take some pressure away from April? And I'm like, and then he offered me like, you know, it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to pay my house payment that next month, or, you know, at the end of the 2 months severance pay. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, dude, that sounds great. And then, you know, this 20-minute ride from Matthews to where my house was. During that drive, I had the call with Jerry, got home. I was out on my deck sitting there like, oh my God, like what happened? You know? And then my phone rings and it was Jared Lyle, who at the time was general manager of Trophy Taker. And he's like, I was just talking with Carter and he told me you're going to help them with their international ad buys and, you know, kind of, he said that you're going to help them with some of your international sales. Cause I know every account. By that point I had done seminars in most shops and clubs all through Europe and, you know, across the world. So I was like, he said, he told me he was going to do this and just pay you a flat monthly rate of this. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you want to do it? And then he said, yeah. And then the next call was Mike Slinkard, who at the time owned Winner's Choice Strings. Now he owns Hex. He's like, hey, Jared, I was just talking with Jared about this project we got coming up, and he said that you're going to help them with their international sales and marketing and their pro staff. I go, yeah. He goes, will you do that for Winner's Choice? And I'm like, by the third call, I go, yeah, it's just a monthly rate of blah, 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 based on like what Jerry had told, you know. And dude, I'm not kidding. I left Matthews and made this 20-mile drive, like thinking I was going to throw up in my own car. Like, why did you dig your heels in and like stick up for yourself and like dig in on this subject when you had a really good thing going? To then 24 hours later, I was already working for 9 companies.
One of them's Hoyt, or?
And Hoyt was actually, I've never told this story. I'll tell it. So Darren Cooper and Zach Kurtzall. Zach is now the president of Hoyt. Zach was an engineer, and Zach also shot competitively. And he shot on the tour with me. He's like, I just heard you left Matthews. Is that true? And I said, yeah, it is. And he's like, we need to figure out, like, he goes, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I've asked Matthews that I wanted to work with them. They told me I'm either all in or all out. And I said, but I have severance pay for the next 60 days. And he's like, would you be willing to meet with Looper and Randy Walk about what you're going to do? And honestly, within the first 24 hours, John Shepley had called me, at the time the president of Bowtech, And then the third call was Zach asking me, and he said, will you meet with Randy and Looper? And I said, and I honestly, I knew deep down if I was going to still be an international sales and marketing kind of guru and competitor, Hoyt was definitely the brand that had the most, like they had the most clout internationally. And I'm like, out of all the brands, for what I'm doing, that tool is going to be okay. So this was 24 hours after my departure with Matthews. He has that call with me, and I said, and he was actually on the phone. Zach was on the phone with George Technichov, who worked for Hoyt and Easton. And George was on the phone too, and they go, do you want to meet? And I said, I don't think it's fair to Matthews that I go to Hoyt tomorrow. I said, and I said, but I'll meet on neutral ground. And George said, will you fly to Easton? And I said, yeah, I'll fly to Easton. When do you want me? And they're like, tomorrow. So they ended up sending, I think they sent an email to my email. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe not, I don't know. But it pretty much said like, hey, we'll see you tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. Well, that email went through the Matthews server. So I think Matthews saw this thing, and to them, they probably thought I was like immediately jumping ship. But I had made it very clear I want to meet on neutral ground. And I told him, I'm like, I'm only going to make a decision based on how good I am with that tool. So I said, I've never really shot a Hoyt. I go, do you think you guys can, I would like to shoot him at the Easton Center. So I flew out and I met him at Easton out back. And I just said, before I have any conversations, I'm not going to use any product if I can't actually use it. So Zach had built me a Hoyt that he thought I would like because it was based on the specs of the bow I was shooting at the time, which was an Apex, which I was doing really, really well with. And so I took this Hoyt, and I still have it. If you ever like look at when I'm practicing, at the top of the stairs in my range, there's a big target face up there, and there's a bow hanging above it. That's the first Hoyt I ever shot.
Nice.
And I went to Easton and I shot a full feeder round, which a full feed is 1440 is the highest possible points. At the time, the world record was a 1412. There was maybe 5 people who had ever broke 1400. So I went out there and I shot a full feeder round with this first Hoyt that they built me, and I shot a 1428 on a two brand new faces. So, I mean, I beat the 90 meter record. I tied the 70 meter record. I beat a 50 meter record, and I tied the 30 meter record. Yeah. In this practice round. Like, no, it's not a tournament. This is practice. But still, to me, I literally said, I'll talk to you. I'm gonna talk to you guys in a couple months. I know this thing works. Funny enough, I never shot that bow ever in competition ever again. And I tried. But for whatever reason, that thing worked on the day that I had to convince myself. So I pretty much told him, listen, I'm not going to put I'm not putting all my eggs into one basket. I want to write. I want to teach. I want to work with teams. I want to coach. If you give me a monthly thing of this, like, I didn't have a shooting contract. I didn't, like, if I went and won tournaments, I could not even make contingency money. I went to work for Hoyt 100% to start writing for international teams, start helping teams.
So they were on board with you being able to do a bunch of other things.
They just wanted to see. They even said, they're like, we don't really know where you fit with us, but we know we don't want to work against you. And I just knew that their tool let me compete, and their name got me in the door. And so that's how that started. And then what happened was, as I built my relationship with Hoyt, what they would do is every year I would work with the team on like, hey, we're going to focus our sales on this place, South Africa. Africa was one of them. We want to grow sales in South Africa. What do we need to do? So I started coaching the team for free. I'd go down, work with the team. I would do this through the Hoyt distributor, Magnum Archery, and got to know Seppi. And, for like 3 years, we'd travel to South Africa and we'd work with some of the archers at times and stuff like that. But then the next year, the initiative was Australia, which I wrote for 2 different publications in Australia at the time. So I actually went down there and I'm like, hey, what are the other writers that are writing for you right now that are good people? And they gave me the names, and then I took them bows and I gave them lessons, and I helped them shoot better. And I would give them like nuggets on like how to work on their gear and stuff like that. And next thing you know, I'm like converting people over. Well, through this process of like 5 years, it comes to Canada. And this is how Nock On begins. They tell me that they want me to focus on helping grow brand marketing or grow market share in Canada. So I went up to Canada and I started talking to shops. Hey, do you want me to come do a free seminar? Do you want me to, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we know you as a shooter. We love you as a shooter. And Wild TV had just started in Canada, which was the first hunting television to begin up there. They could maybe get DVDs or VHS tapes back then, but like they were watching like Monster Bucks 2 and 3 and 4. So once Wild TV, the network, started, well, now they have like, they've got like celebrities, right? All these hardcore bow hunters can now can now watch these shows. So he said, man, we can fill a store right now with any TV personality that's on Wild TV. Like, if it's a Michael Waddell or a Ralph and Vicky, like, we will fill the store. But if you're not on Wild TV, it's not going to work. Well, prior to this, I had some like DVDs, hunting DVDs. It was D&D bow hunting. It was myself and Zach Kurtzall's best friend at the time, the other engineer at Hoyt, Darren Cooper. We had this DVD that we did together, which was, kind of had the feel of Nock On's TV as people know it. It was different at the time, but we sold DVDs out of our car, and that's what we did, right? Okay. So all these little things that I started were with Zach, who's now president at Hoyt, so like he was there from the beginning of all this stuff. Well, I was given the direction to grow the sales in Canada. The owner and the VP of Wild TV, his name was Helgi. He had bought one of my DVDs that I was selling out of my car at Hunt Fest in Alberta one time. And he called me and he's like, dude, why don't you put this on TV? These hunts are so cool, edited this way. And I just said, I can't afford it. So then I ended up calling Helgi and I'm like, hey, I need to become a hunting personality on Wild TV because I want to start doing some seminars and stuff up there. And I said, what do you think about me taking my hunts and building the television show? And he's like, dude, if you will do that and like, give some of your tips like you're giving, because we had tips sections in these DVDs, which they weren't allowing on the network because they didn't want you to waste more than X amount of minutes where it wasn't like B-roll or hunting footage. Like there was all these parameters to being on network. So he just told me, dude, we'll give you the air. They gave me 5 days of airtime if I would actually do he's like, I want to see John Dudley hunting shows. Yeah. And so Wild TV gave me it. Nice. And so with that, we had to come up with a name. And I wanted the nucleus was that I do archery every day, all day, and I want to teach it. So like archery 365, always knocked. Like there was all these names, and throughout the process, all of a sudden the name, like, there was a lot that were taken and we couldn't have, but then Nock On, like we were just kicking around names, and then all of a sudden Nock On comes up, and I go, no, Nock On, dude. Like, cause I was already visualizing my sign off. I'm just like, Nock On, dude. And so Hoyt offered their artist, Mitch, to help us work on a logo. And so Mitch was like, can you tell me your personality? Can you describe this stuff? And I ended up saying, some people describe me as like an archer mixed with like a surfer, like, cause I'm kind of chill, I'm kind of like the dude, I guess. And, he goes, well, I need to know your personality so I can make a logo that like captures you. Well, I'd actually hosted some Danish archers on an antelope hunt like 2 weeks prior to that, and they were Hoyt dealers, and they had got their first antelope, and I was behind the thing with them, and I was like, like that.
So,
dude,
he did
so
it.
he drew the Nock with that based
Nice.
on that picture
That's
of me
cool.
celebrating behind, a fresh kill. And as soon as we and honestly, he submitted a page of logos, but when we saw that one, it was just like, duh, that's it.
Right.
That's like that is us. Like I'm always knocked on, whether I'm designing, whether I'm doing a marketing strategy, whether I'm getting ready for a hunt, whether you're calling me and saying, "Hey, Dud, CBS is going to be out here."
And you need an arrow to shoot through their GoPro.
Yeah,
right here.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
It worked.
Yeah, so it's like I'm always knocked on, and that's literally how the mark became.
It's awesome.
Was for this company that I worked for to be able to get their foot in the door. Like for me to be able to get my foot in the door, I had to become a hunting guy. Even though that is actually what I always loved more than anything. I started filming myself at 17 years old with like over the shoulder VHS.
I think
stuff.
didn't you put something like a while ago on Instagram? You had a picture or something of you with your gear or something from back in the day with the VHS thing.
It was always hunting, but since hunting in a lot of the foreign countries is taboo, DudleyArchery.info was very target related.
Yeah.
And I didn't share my hunting stuff on there.
Right.
It's very target specific. So, and I think that's why D&D bow hunting, that was kind of, I wanted to be able to showcase my hunting side of what I was passionate about, but I couldn't because there's also and that's what's so like delicate to me about our, in America, we have a lot of things that we take for granted. And I traveled a lot of places in the world, and you've spent a lot of time in South Africa and Africa. Listen, you can't bow hunt in every single country. France, Spain, Africa, Australia, Canada, like Scandinavia. There's Denmark. Like that's it. To go shoot something with a bow, let alone some of those places, like you can't just carry a gun around. Australia, right? Like not going to happen. England, you don't just like go get your gun. Like they've got to be kept certain places. Like, and as I traveled, I recognized the fact of this is a very delicate subject, very delicate subject. And I think it's important. I wish here as an American community, we recognize the fact that we have got to be united. There should not be divides of public land, private land, DIY guy. I go with an outfitter. I only like high FOC. You shoot an expandable. All these are just petty barriers that cause divide. They're cracks. And they're cracks. And then what's going to happen is eventually these cracks are going to keep going and crossing over. And a non-hunting, structured and well-organized organization is going to come in and drop a fist on that, and it's going to go boom.
The fissures and it crumbles.
Yep. So my whole passion from the very beginning of our brand is how do I deliver hunting education? How do I deliver hunting on TV that is tasteful, happens fast? Honestly, like even on some of my longer shots, I've edited those to where they look shorter because I don't want to promote like non-ethical shots. Obviously, thank goodness Traeger came into the hunting community, and because everything in the hunting community taught us how to kill. Nothing taught us how to cook.
I was going to ask you about that, where the cooking came in. Had a Traeger right outside. You saw it when we walked in, right out there.
Listen, Traeger changed the hunting community. When Traeger came in, and they actually came to me because of a mutual friend that worked with me when I was at Under Armour. That mutual friend came to me and kind of wanted to they actually offered to give me a grill, but I'm like, no, I want to pay for it. And we got a grill, and I cooked for the first time on it. And I was like, this is different. This changed it. And then because I was so passionate about loving the fact that what I was shooting myself was better tasting, and my friends liked it, and my family was like, what are you making next? Well, then Nock to Fork came because...
When are you going to do a cookbook?
When am I going to do like an archery book?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the cookbook's already there though. Instagram
For
posts, take those pictures, take those, the descriptions.
For sure.
Have somebody put together the rough draft, and then you go through and change it up a little bit because it seems like you've already written it almost.
Yeah, it's
And the archery book you've already written as well. It's just
Yeah.
consolidating all those posts, all those old articles, all that stuff, putting it in a whatever way you want to present it in a book, and then got a rough draft, and now can spend a little time with it, however long is appropriate, get it to where you want it to be, and then
see this circles right back to what you brought up earlier of your problem of like, now I've got to the point where I need someone that's a lead on this. Because I just need to be John. Mm-hmm. Like I need to like shoot something cool and cook it. But if I have to cook it, produce it, proof the editor that did it,
just post it, right? Make sure that it's not,
post it, right? Make sure, spell check it correctly, tag the, it's like all
and
that.
then do the story.
And so at that point, I don't have time for a cookbook. I don't have time for an archery book. We're as a brand, we're slowly getting to the point where we are really recognizing what people really consume from us, and we're trying to structure our team that puts me in a better position to where I can deliver that information as much as possible. Yeah, because that's what makes me happy too. Like, listen, come to these TAC events and watching people shoot and seeing the amount of people I saw shoot that have been shooting less than 6 months that shot the Nock On course, the hardest technical 3D course that I've ever experienced, and I've shot thousands of them.
On this last one, this was the one you just did, is the hardest one you set up.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably yeah. But for someone that's shot less than a year to roll out there, and then they only lose 2 or 3 arrows,
nice.
That just shows how awesome it is when there's accessible information that is good quality. Mm-hmm. But with that, now there's the gray line of there's a lot of people that want to put information out there because they want to be, the next thing, and honestly, they're passionate about it. But there's some people that don't necessarily get it right. They're regurgitating information, and that probably happens obviously in the military field, but probably in the gun side of things, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
To where it's just like, they try a new like load, and they're like, oh, this is the next thing. But then Craig Boddington's out there like, I talked about that 20 years ago, and the reason we went away from that was blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So there's kind of like this evolution of time. And going back to that evolution release, so that release was called the Evolution. But then since I started working with 2-finger releases and like recognizing the increase in accuracy by having less fingers on the tool that releases the arrow. Okay. I made a 2-finger. I was personally shooting a 2-finger version, and I showed Joe, and he's like, I love how it's silver. Why is it like this? And I go, it's a prototype, dude. It hasn't been anodized. And he goes, I want one of these, but I want it like this. I don't want it colored. I want it like raw. And I'm like, okay. And then he goes, he goes, you should do these. And he's like, I'm going to shoot it. This is what I shoot. And I go, and you want them silver? And he goes, 100%. I want them silver, non-colored. Like, this is the raw start of archery. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to name it? And he goes, call it the Silverback. Nice. Of course. Well, guess what? That name was actually already registered by another company in our industry. And I personally called him. I called the owner and I said, hey man, I know you own this name and you're not currently using it, but I have can I use the name? And I explained the why, and I explained like what it was and how I was going to coach people and kind of how it all tied together. And he's just like, you know what? You're going to do good with that. We'll give you the name.
That's awesome.
And so another release company gave me the name.
No kidding.
Yep. Gave me the name. And this is also why it's so critical that we don't burn bridges within our industry. And that's one of the hard things about right now, me being in my position of, I've been on the manufacturing side of the fence and I've been on the ambassador side of the fence. There's a lot of things that manufacturers do that are because they need to promote their company and keep their employees working and all that stuff. But there's also some things that ambassadors do, and they don't recognize that it's actually hurtful to the manufacturer. And it's because they've never been on the other side of the globe. You know, they've never looked at it from two directions. Yeah. So it's like one-way glass. You know, they're like, okay, they can promote me because I want to be this, when the reality is, no, they're promoting you to promote them. So you actually need to go to the other side of that and say, how do I promote them so much in a positive way that they promote me more, instead of just like, you need to promote me more. So, you know, I've seen it from both ways. And I think that in the industry, that's why as a brand, like in that instance, I went forward and hadn't burned a bridge, and it was absolutely, this is going to be good for our industry. Love the direction of that. Take it and run with it.
That's awesome.
And I really, and honestly, like, I still communicate with Matthews. I still communicate with Hoyt. But you know what? 3 years ago, PSE came forward and said, we love what you're doing. We want to like go in all in. And I became a free agent, you know, and everybody kind of knew that was, you know, my long-term contract was coming up. And truthfully, what I tried to do 3 years ago was I tried to get all the bow manufacturers to come to support me at a lower level so that I could actually work for all of them.
Yeah.
But the industry wasn't ready for that yet. Yeah. And I'm not so sure that that's not going to come around like at some point. However, PSE also came forward very aggressively and said, listen, we want to give you the ability to like make your own bows. And we want to give you an engineer, let you make your own bows. You can be part of like how you market that thing. We'll be totally hands off. We're just literally giving you the ability to be a bow manufacturer and give you the tools. And that was an awesome partnership, because that was the one side of my whole archery like life that I had. Yeah, because I worked under Matt McPherson and Zach Kurtzall, who was the, you know, first called me. He was an engineer at Hoyt. Darren Cooper they were both engineers at Hoyt. So I was communicating with engineers all the time throughout my whole like timeline. I've been in design, I've been in R&D, and I've been in marketing. So, but I'd never done it for myself. I didn't want to just put my name on a bow that was like the model. You know, I didn't want to just make a John Dudley signature bow. Right. Like I actually wanted like, hey, like I want to make what I want to shoot, and which is, so that Nock To It right there.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, so that Nock To It is actually based on a release called a Wise Choice, which me and Jerry worked on together, which was taking one of his most popular releases at the time, a Just Cuz, that did not have an auto closing jaw. And I'm like, I need a handheld release so that I can, as a hunter, clip on a string and it stays on there. Okay. But I also, even in early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, I shot releases with only 2 fingers. So I would be shooting this release that no one could get because Jerry made me like some for myself. And Sharon, who had started the whole product side of Nock On, because she's like, listen, your emails, all these emails and people reaching out through dudleyarchery.info and nockon.com, they're just saying like, why does John shoot this? And why does John shoot that? She's like, you need to explain that. So I told Jerry, I'm like, can we make some 2-finger releases? And he said, at the time, I think it was 85. Was it 85? I think, you know, he's like, we've only ever sold 85 2-finger releases in the history of our company. And so he kind of said like, if I'm going to make that and we're going to shut down tooling and everything to do it, you're going to have to literally pre-buy more than we've ever done. And so Sharon's like, do it, and tell people why you shoot it. And so we like wrote this check, which was huge for us. And we bought all the first product. And I literally did a Facebook Live, and I'm like, hey, you've been asking about this thing and why I shoot it. Here it is. We're going to offer this. And so the Nock to it was based on my way of coaching, but they were never available. And then because I described the why, that's why that happened. But then also the next thing was like, okay, well, why do you use an evolution sometimes? And I'm like, okay, well, this tool teaches you the dynamics of a release, but this thing gives you the ability to control your own dynamics, the Nock to it. Right. So, and then the wrist strap shooters were like, we want to cure target panic, but with our index finger. And so, we ended up coming out with a back strap, which is a wrist strap version of a silverback.
I saw that. It was like a year ago. Is that when?
Yeah, it was like a year and a half ago. And so, what I tell people is this: when they're like trying to figure out, like you're trying to figure out which release would I really use, I tell people the reason why some people that shoot an index finger release and struggle with target panic and anticipation, when they switch over to a handheld release, the reason why all of a sudden it's a reset mentally, or if you go from if you have like thumb anticipation, you go to a silverback where the thumb is only a safety and you have to let off and pull through. What I tell people is, each of your fingers are like kids. They're all from the same family, but this thing you come out of the womb and you're picking book. This thing's pick it, flick it, poke it, pry it out. Like this thing is a flicker and a hitter. That's what your index finger is. Your thumb has always been taught to hold on, to stabilize, to control, to be patient. So your thumb can address a trigger and also have the patience. Your thumb has patience. Your index finger,
I like that.
You know what I mean? So, so by changing to a different finger, some people can completely reset a poor habit because now it's like you've brought in a whole new coach or a whole new personality. Yeah. So a lot of our products are like that. And, Sharon started Nock On literally in our garage with a rack, and people would write in and say, John's given all these free articles and he came and coached and he came and did this seminar, and how do we support him? Was there anything?
Was this the first product then?
No, the first product was like 3 shirts and a hat.
Okay.
Yep. And then, that probably was the first actual tool.
Yeah.
Am I right?
But there were hats and t-shirts.
Yeah. That was the first tool. Yeah. And then it just kept going by category, and then eventually, here comes PSE,
right there,
giving me the ability to bring out bows, which the first bow, I just wanted a bulletproof aluminum design that just shot really well. I made the brace height super forgiving to where when people shot it, it was smooth, it was quiet, and they were actually accurate because the arrow wasn't on the string very long. So it was just a very forgiving bow the way it was put together. Well, then for the next project, immediately what I wanted to do was I really wanted to offer a bow that had an unbelievable bang for the buck. Yeah. So going from a high-end aluminum model, the next thing I did was go right to the to the, this can get people into archery. Yeah. The first bow, the NTN, was named after the nation. So our community was so supportive, and I always felt weird calling them fans. And I kind of told Sharon, I feel weird saying fan, just fan seems weird, or follower seems weird, because that's not what I think when they come up to me. Yeah. And she goes, no, they're our community. We're like a nation. It's a Nock On Nation. And that's how the Nock On Nation flag started, with the Knocks,
Hashtag Nock On Nation.
Yeah. So then it became a community. So that first bow, the NTN, is just an abbreviation for nation. Nice. And then the next one, the Embark, was based on, I just want people to embark on the archery path. So how can they get into archery for an affordable price, but have something that has all the tools to still be a really good shooting model? And that was the Embark. Well, then the next one was now that I've done what everyone's expecting me to do, I want to make the most expensive bow ever made. No limitations to materials, no limitations to how long each one takes. Okay. I literally went backwards. I said, how can I make the most awesome shooting thing, but if there's no limitations, and then let's figure out what that costs, and whatever it costs, let's just price it according to how we have to price it.
Yeah.
And there's just not going to be that many of them. But I told him, I'm like, my personal passion is to make the highest end bow. So then when the Levitate came out and that new cam system, which I had shot the PSE bows for 2 years at that point, I knew what I wanted to do different to the cam, to kind of put together what I loved about all of the places I had been to something that was just really comfortable and super accurate. And so the Levitate came out, and my goal for the Levitate always was, I'm like, I want to make a bow to where when I pull this thing out of a box on a scale, they're going to see the number and they're going to assume that's just the weight of the bow.
Okay.
And as it comes out of the box, that thing is going to have a sight on it, a rest on it, and a stabilizer on it. And it's going to be the same weight as the competitors with just a naked bow.
Yeah.
And the accuracy, you know, so then the Levitate comes out and ends up winning like bow of the year, right?
Nice.
Yeah. So then, you know, for me, I feel like that whole like creative hunger that I had, I feel like PSE is the people that gave me the ability to like quench that hunger of like actually being able to just bring a bow forward the way that I did with that release, or, you know, some of the other products that we work on.
So awesome. You know, Pete Shepley came to my book signing in Phoenix
I saw
last
that.
time. Front row. It was awesome. I got up there in the front. I looked down. There he was right there. PSE shirt on, the whole deal, you know, legend in the front row. That was that was super cool of him to show up.
See, my first bow that I ever bought was a PSE.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And it was at the Gander Mountain outlet in Wilmot, Wisconsin. Kidding. But yeah, my first one that I ever bought for myself was a PSE. So that's cool. Kind of what was cool. You know, I did like a decade at Matthews, a decade at Hoyt, which at Hoyt I wasn't internal. PSE I'm not internal. But I'm like, for me, I feel like I'm coming full circle. Like, I don't feel like I'm jumping brands, because each brand has been there. And the same was true with Under Armour. You know, Under Armour was a very important place for me to like to be, honestly, during the time, because they looked at the hunting community in a different light. Like, Kip loved my athleticism. He loved that I worked out, and he loved that I taught. Honestly, that was like a real, like, I felt like I was banging my head against the wall at like Realtree or Mossy Oak, trying to like get a camo sponsor when all they wanted was like a Realtree Road Trips type show. They wanted people on the Outdoor Channel. Like, that was just their focus, or a writer, you know, Bill Winke or whatever. So, you know, it was not, at the time, Under Armour gave me a really awesome, like, stress-free ability to just do what I was doing. And they were kind of, honestly, I don't even know if they really like paid attention, because I wasn't like, you know, I was just kind of doing something different. Yeah. And then, honestly, when I met Jonathan Hart and Barklow, you know, through you and Andy, because you were like a key part of talking with Jonathan Hart about like your experience with me, because Jonathan hadn't experienced with me, and then Andy introduced me to Barklow, and then Barklow's like, I'm already consuming his content, dude. Like, he'll come over and we can talk and shoot. And Andy's like, yeah, let's do it. And so then, obviously, when the three of us got together, I was like, sick as matching my DNA, because you know, my friendship and my unity is with Barklow, and he does a good job of explaining the why. And when I can hear the why, then I'm better at being a coach and doing what we do as a brand, which is educate people on the why. Like, every product has a why. So I try to be transparent about that. And, you know, listen, I can shoot, I can have Easton make me whatever I want. I could call PSE and have him make me whatever I want. Same thing with Jerry Carter. I mean, I've got thousands of prototype releases that I've gone over through my life. I shoot what allows me to come here and put on the best performance I can in front of people. And also what makes me be the most successful in the woods. So what you see me shooting, that's what I choose to shoot based on my accuracy. Yeah. You know, I don't settle for products, and I certainly don't ignore like new fads and things like that. It's just, there's probably a good chance I've already gone through that testing route with, honestly, some of the legends of our industry. Like, do you think I haven't seen vein testing and helical testing and FOC testing when I've been with Easton for 25 years? Do you think I haven't, like, do you think I don't know about a bow tune and being able to put a 1/2 inch shorter cable on something? Or, I mean, I've seen thousands of bows that Matt McPherson would literally prototype, build, give to me. I would have to go shoot. I would plot the accuracy. I would give feedback on that, and he would instantly make an engineering change so that the tune was like, you know, it's literally my entire life has been archery, and every single thing that I do is to try to help people learn archery, get good at it easier. Like, you know, I'm not using something because I don't like that brand. I'm sticking to what I know makes me the most accurate on paper, because that's really that's the litmus test of where I'm at as a person. Is I feel like I can deliver good information when I'm on point as, you know, who I am or as an athlete. And that's everything I use is based on that, and speak.
Well, you've been crushing it, my friend.
Time to get back training in case I get a field this fall, as I've been doing a lot more writing than I've been doing working out lately, which is why I was so fired up for this care package from First Form. I tried the protein meat sticks right away and absolutely love them. Protein meat sticks from First Form are similar to protein bars as far as benefits. First Form protein meat sticks are a delicious and very convenient way to get more protein throughout the day. Protein is essential to any health or fitness goal. No other meat stick like it on the market, packed with a full 20 grams of protein in each stick and only 200 calories or less total. It comes in 5 incredible flavors: original smokehouse, seasoned barbecue, Cajun style, jalapeno heat, and breakfast sausage. Great for a snack at the office, in the car, on a hike, or anywhere you're on the go. Check them out. I've also been drinking the Opti Greens 50 from First Form. OptiGreens 50 is a precisely formulated greens superfood powder meant for overall immune system support and digestive health. 50 hand-chosen ingredients in precise and effective amounts with non-GMO and non-synthetic superfoods that provide a well-rounded blend of vitamins plus antioxidant-packed ingredients for overall immune health support and defense against toxins in the air and in the foods we eat to keep us as healthy as possible all year long. Go to firstform.com/Jack Carr. That's the number one STPHORM.com/Jack Carr to receive free shipping on any orders over $75. Once again, that's firstform.com/Jack Carr.
So when people ask me, you know, they ask me about archery or whatever, and I always direct them to you and your website, of course, because there's no better place to go.
Thank you for that.
Of course. And so it's so cool to see people who get introduced to archery just like that. Just random reach out. Sometimes I know them, sometimes I don't. And then to see them go to your website, and then all of a sudden they're going to classes, they're making their own arrows, but like they go all in on it. It's so really cool to see. But also what I tell people is, you know, and they're like, what kind of bow should I get? You probably, what kind of bow should I get?
Yeah.
And for me, I always love to support those local archery shops, because I have such great memories of being in those kind of shops as a kid and looking at whether it was posters or targets or the taxidermy or whatever else. And I just love that. And so I always say, kind of like with independent bookstores, you're like, where can I get your book? Well, you can get it anywhere, but you know, I try to support independent bookstores, local bookstores as much as I possibly can. So please, you know, get it there. But I say, hey, go to that shop, talk to the guys there, shoot a bunch of different things, and maybe let them know if you have a budget and you know what that is, and hey, what's the best? What can I get for this amount? This is what I have to spend, and then they can give you a few options. Shoot those few options, and use what feels the best type of a thing. But spend some time in there doing that. So that's typically, you know, what I tell people. And like your relationship with Hoyt, they're right down the street here. Obviously, if people go to the Rambo First Blood Part 2 novelization, and a novelization is a book written off a screenplay for something very, very popular in the 80s and into the 90s. But in the beginning there, David Morrell, who created Rambo with First Blood back in 1972, has a little paragraph or two, and he talks about the knife, like Jimmy Lyle knife, and then he talks about Hoyt for the bow. And
for the Hoyt Rambo.
And it's so cool. Yeah, he does it in, and I think in the novelization of Rambo 3, it's in the front there as well. So, so I was very, tuned into Hoyt early on because of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, Rambo shooting this thing, amazing. But primarily shot bears, and I think most archery, all their high end bows are also good now. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
Yeah, there's several brands, that are. I think what's happened is a lot of the companies have had really good innovations and patents, and as they go forward, they have to license. They license that, and they might want some technology that another company, like over the last two decades.
Yeah.
Each company has came out with like one or two little nuggets that now every bow has.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of patent swapping because like this company who owns a patent on this type of take up on a cam, they need to have this type of limb pocket. So like
how does that, do they license it then? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, the best case scenario is that you've got something they want to where you just like make an even swap. Like, hey, we're going to redo that, a split limb, that'd be one, like let's say everyone all of a sudden decided they needed a bridge in the back of the riser. Like Hoyt's going to be like, okay, well that tech riser, but obviously a lot of them are like exchanging certain patents now. And I think the other thing too is a lot of the engineers are now understanding the whys of the original innovators of archery. And so there's like engineers coming in that have degrees in like, how to make efficiency of a wheel and stuff like that. So there's been a lot of things that have come forward, and now we're actually almost at the point of terminal velocity. Like our efficiency is theoretically and mathematically, the efficiency of cam systems as we have now, they're almost like plateaued. The only way we can get more out of them, it's all give or take. It's like, okay, if you want more speed, you can have it, but you need to have more power stroke on the string. So this model will have less brace height, or it's always give or take. Okay. One company might come out with a new bow and they say it's 4 feet per second faster. However, their string now has two less strands in it, and they haven't told you that. So they're literally gaining speed by taking weight. It's like give or take. They're literally like figuring out a way to like market it. I know in the gun industry it's like that too. There's just small little nuances. Like speed is physics, right? So and a system that's launching a projectile also physics. So there comes a point where it's like, we can only throw this thing. Like this catapult can only throw this rock that far, unless the catapult now has a lever arm that's 4 times longer, or it's more powerful, the spring to cock the thing, or the thing that like throws the rock out of the bucket is less weight, so that you can actually throw it. So it's give or take a lot of that now. But there's a lot of brands that are basing what they're doing on things that people like in the market, and they're doing their best to not overstep each other's technologies and marketing campaigns. Which is cool though, because here's the thing, like, and it's why even though I love my PSE, my bow I shot amazing this whole year. I mean, for me to be at the age that I am, 47, and shoot the way I did, and last hunting season was like off the charts for me too. I've definitely had the best 12 months of my life with my Levitate. But in saying that, not everyone can get a Levitate, because guess what? One, they can't make enough. Like, they're maxed out right now. The waiting list is long. They're like, they're maxed out. But some towns have 2 good dealers, and dealer A might have the exclusive rights to Matthews and Hoyt, and dealer B might have the exclusive. They can't get Matthews or Hoyt, so guess what? They get PSE and they get a Bowtech or whatever. And those archery shops have to compete against each other, not because they want to. the manufacturers really put them in that position because the manufacturers are trying to protect them with margin and oversaturating your product. You know, it's not like you can have a car dealership on every corner, right? Because you just start robbing Peter to pay Paul. So some of these archery shops have brand A and B because the shop across town has C and D. And honestly, that's important. Like, we need to have multiple brands that are good, because I don't want the shop that's can only get C and D because Caleb's a great example, right? Down in Arizona.
Caleb Brewer, he'll be here tomorrow.
Oh, will he?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, Caleb's a perfect example. He came in, bought a shop, right?
Yeah.
He bought a shop that also had great brands. But I can guarantee you he had to sell himself to those brands, because it's not like it's a franchise where just because you sell your dealership means you get a Chevy or a Ford like that you can just buy and sell. He had to pretty much say, you know, this is the commitment I'll do. This is how many numbers I'll do per, like, you know, he's making those things. So like, for honestly, all the companies we've talked about, they have protected areas for their dealers. So there'll be like a circle drawn. You look at population, and then you really have to pick out how many shops can this density have? And sometimes both good shops are right next to each other. And that's unfortunate, because even though both of those shops could probably sell all 4 or 5 brands and do a good job with all of them, they also the manufacturers give people protected areas. And yeah, so sometimes you have great shops that can't get certain products.
Interesting.
So they've got to sell another. But, you know, again, it's forced the industry to have good products overall. You know, there's a lot of good bows. Yeah. But there's like, with that price tag, there's also bows that don't cut any corners, whether it's on the craftsmanship, whether it's on the material, whether it's on the process. You kind of get what you pay for. Yeah. And they're on the high end of archery. Like, a good shooter could shoot all of them. I mean, a good shooter, they all have their feel, for sure. I mean, I'm sure with you shooting guns, you know that, you know, like, you know, and I don't,
like, you could tell the difference between all of these. Like, we have here, I think we have bows from most of the manufacturers around here. There's
quite a few in
here. Just in here, there's so you saw the ones on the mantle inside.
Like there's more in here than there is in my area, man. I'm like better at, like, if I'm not using it, putting it in someone's hands at will.
Yeah.
Thing.
I like to have options.
Yeah.
And my idea, a lot of this was also, I wanted to help out Caleb as he was starting his shop. So I'm like, hey, I want to be your first bow. I want to help you, you know. Yeah. I just called him right away. And so that was one of those. And then, of course, something else happens and I want another one and whatever. But I also wanted to have them strategically placed around the house. So you saw the 3D target, so I can go downstairs and not have to be like, oh, I got to run up to my office to grab the bow. I just want to be able to snag one, walk outside and launch some arrows and come back in and keep doing whatever I'm doing. So they're strategically placed around here as well for that reason. But they're all great. But obviously, I'm not near, never be near the level that you are. Well, you'll be able to really tell the differences between all these things and be able to tell. Like, I just know there's some differences, but couldn't tell you. I can't articulate what they are. And these are all really nice bows, and they all feel great to me.
Really good archers they're kind of a human form of what's called an instron machine. An instron pulls the bow, and it's literally plotting every single poundage change per drawing, and that's what builds a draw curve. And so, like, when I pull a cam back, you know, the way that poundage stacks and plateaus and drops off, and then, you know, that's called the power curve. I can, like, feel that. You know, a lot of times I can pull it back and be like, oh, that's for sure a Matthews, and that feels like a Hoyt. And nice. And honestly, like, for me, the cam system I've shot better than anything ever is my PSE cam system.
Nice. And there are 3 of them right now? Those 3 you talked about, those are the 3?
I have 4. I came out with the Unite, which is like an upgraded version of the NTN. Okay. The Unite is kind of a high-end aluminum model that came out this year with PSE.
So you have 4. with them right now that you've worked on. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that one a year or is it less? It's more than that.
It's been, yeah. I feel like you writing books. Like I honestly kind of thought it'd be fun to do a bow. And then I was passionate about the price point bow for the people with the Embark. But yeah, we've done 4 bows with PSE in 3.5 years, which probably pretty good. Especially since I'm not like technically a bow engineer. It's just, that's all I've done my whole life.
Yeah. What's going forward? What are you doing? Is there another bow on the horizon you want to do? Or do you think that, hey, those 4 options cover a lot of archers, or what do you
There were some other options, but I think, I don't know. It really comes down to what our company's plan is moving forward. And it comes down to time, you know, with a bow design and a bow launch comes down to time. And I'm shooting my levitate so good that I kind of don't want to change too.
Yeah. Is it the white one? Is that one of one?
Yeah, I have the 2 that like have been awesome was this white one that they built me.
And is that a one of one, or is that an option for people?
Well, I kind of keep telling people to just send a message into PSE and ask them for it. So I think I've forced them. I've forced the custom shop to offer it now. So people just got to like wait for a custom color time and pay an upcharge, but it is available. Okay. But then I had my one for my whole hunting season where everyone was like, what camo is that on there? Well, I had a desert sand colored one, but it kind of looked flat, and I kind of wanted it to look a little different, to be honest with you. And I wanted to kind of like, just like with a sniper rifle, I kind of wanted to break up the outline a little bit. So everyone wants to know like where the stenciling on my bow came from. It's, and you probably got one. Do you ever get gifts from Leupold?
I have a few.
Did you get the Christmas box where it had the little bourbon shot glass?
Oh no,
the eyepiece shot glass.
Okay,
it was the eyepiece made into a little shot glass. It had like a little single thing of bullet bourbon, and it had a Christmas ornament that was elk antlers.
Oh, nice.
Stencil. So I took that Christmas ornament and I cut out the center of a paper plate and taped it on there, and I used that to like spray paint the black elk antlers on my tan levitate. So
nice.
Like the custom, when everyone says like what was that custom paint job, it was literally a Christmas tree ornament. From
I can see how that would work perfectly, because there was those, gosh, who made it? There was that you could buy 4 or 5 different really small cans of camo paint, and it had a
couple
fern.
leaves.
Like a plastic fern, and like 2 of them or something like that. So you could kind of put them together and change your angles and just over the top. So we use that for a lot of our sniper weapon systems early on in the teams. And now of course you can buy a stock that has all sorts of different, just like we can with the bow, all those different kind of. But you couldn't always do that. There wasn't always all these different camouflage patterns that you could use. But you did the same thing, and I can totally in my mind picture a Christmas ornament and picture fun. You doing that. But because here's the Leupold right here. So I like this one. Which one is this? This is the RX 2800 TBRW.
Yeah, so that thing's good for rifle and archery both.
Yeah, I like this thing.
And they're such an awesome
couple years old though.
Here. They're really good people.
Is there another one? This one's a couple years old now. Is there a new?
Well, the archery specific one is the full draw. There's a full draw 5.
Okay.
Which what's cool about that is it actually has the trigonometry built into it to where when you set up your rangefinder, you pretty much put your iris, like the distance from your peep to your arrow shaft, your peep height, the distance from your peep to your front sight, and then your ballistics, like your arrow weight and your speed. And so then that trigonometry gets put into your rangefinder to where there's a feature in there that when you range something, if anything in that laser's field would impair the arc of your arrow, it'll flag it and it'll draw like a line. And it also factors in all the trigonometry for distance or for elevation, incline, decline, because you have to subtract yardage when you're shooting on angles. So it'll factor in, the degree of angle, the distance, obviously what the percentage of cut is, and then it'll, you can range and it'll tell you with a bow, shoot it for this.
Right.
And then the second number that'll pop up is like what that line of sight is, but not, you know, the trig, what you shoot it for type thing.
Yep. Nice. I'm gonna order one of those later today.
Get one. Full draw 5.
Full draw 5.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
getting it.
legit. It's
Nice.
legit.
I'm getting that for sure. And I also want to ask you out before you go, the workout regimen has changed over the last, year and a half?
Yeah.
And so what are you doing these days?
So 2 Februaries ago, it was actually right before the adaptive shoot down in San Antonio. I was with Clancy. You've met Clancy, right? I was with Clancy, and I kind of told him, there's certain times in my life where I really want a training regimen, because I feel like when my schedule is chaotic, I want discipline on, you know, I'm doing this with my diet, I'm doing this with my workout. Like I like a training regimen, just like when you start playing football, you know, you start practice in football, it's like you have 3 a days, then you have 2 a days, and then this is what your practice week's like because you have game day. And I kind of do that same thing. I wanted to have my diet clean, my physical body clean. I wanted to start training and really shooting because my first tack was going to be in February or in April that year. So on like the end of January, February 1st, I was talking to him about this, and I said, I'm thinking about trying like carnivore diet or something. And Clancy's like, dude, honestly, I've tried them all. And he goes, I feel like your body, because he asked me what the reason was. And I said, sometimes I feel like I don't digest food that well. Like, you know, I feel like I'm bloated. I feel like I'm holding weight. And I definitely had, you know, what I thought was some arthritis starting in my hands and in my shoulders, which is wear and tear naturally. And he goes, dude, try keto. He's like, I've tried them all, but he's like, my body responded to keto like big time. And I told him that I really like eating fresh vegetables and stuff. And so I just I'm like, well, what do I do? And he kind of went through some like super simple basics of like, hey, you know, I had these strips. I actually ended up talking to Peter Tia, who you know Peter, right?
Oh, no.
Have you not met Dr. Peter Tia?
Nope.
I'm surprised by that. So Peter told me that to get like a keto sense, like electric blood tester, I got that. And then Clancy gave me like 2 things that he would eat for breakfast that were keto friendly, 2 things he'd eat for lunch, and 2 things he'd eat for dinner. And he's like, these are 2 things I would eat. And I just said, give me those and I'll do the same thing for a month. Like I can totally do that. Yeah. And then Sharon ended up buying me this, like, it was pretty much a magazine booklet. It was like a keto guide. She got it at Barnes and Noble, and it was just like a magazine. So I just read like how to start keto, really, you know, cutting sugar, cutting carbs. That's, if you really want to simplify it, that's what it is. You're reading labels. If it's got sugar in there, you don't, if it's got carbs in there, you don't eat it. And honestly, it's like, I'm down 55 pounds.
You're down?
I'm
55 pounds.
Yeah.
I would not have thought
198 right now, right, sitting right here. And I've lost 0 strength from what I was at.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I've got like, I feel like I've got more gas in my tank. I feel like I'm actually shooting the same as when I was in my late teens and, you know, early 20s. Like, I feel like I have that. I feel like I have more flexibility. I sleep better. My energy level's like 100% sustainable through the days. Like, for example, I came here not because I wanted to, but just because of schedule. We flew in Tuesday, had a really cool day with Evan, had a good dinner. But then Wednesday, I went to the TAC. We set up, like my whole team, we set up. I like checked our course. Then I had an appearance at Badass Archery down in town. So I like barely made it there with like 2 minutes to spare. And it was packed. Nice. I mean, there were people everywhere, and it was just a lot of people. I never had time to eat. Then by the time we got back and TAC starting the next day, we drove all the way back up to Solitude, got to the B&B, nothing's open. It's on a Wednesday, nothing's open. So I couldn't eat, got up in the morning, went to the course, started at 5:45 a.m., went up with Michael Shea to do some content for Free Range American, got to my target by 8 a.m. And then here comes, you know, 10 hours of people come through. Then I go down to the booth, get to the booth at 5 o'clock, and then I'm in the booth from 5 o'clock until shutdown. And then before I knew it, we went to to dinner, and I'd fasted like 47 hours.
Oh,
didn't
man.
Didn't even bleep. Like didn't even
after
bleep.
that when you're doing that finishing in the booth, after that do you do, or is it part of the booth where you do the Yeti shoot, like those? Isn't there like a competition, something at the end of the day?
No, I stay on the Yeti target for the whole day. And
okay.
See, what I do is I shoot with every single person that signs up for our range. Some days I can't be there depending on commitments, or if I'm doing something in a different part of the village. But yeah, I'm very interactive. Now there has been times where we've had like contests on
I think
SAS.
at the end of the day there was
depends on the venue. Some venues can't support a range, so maybe I'm on like a novelty shot or something. But even hunting last year, I mean, if I had beef jerky, baby bells, and like mixed nuts in my backpack,
you're good,
dude, I was good. And so I've changed, I like Barklow went keto.
Did he?
So Barklow and I were at the Pope and Young convention. I was a keynote speaker, and Barklow spoke as well. And he was just like, dude, this is, at that point, 14 months. He's like, so you're in. I'm like, I'm totally in.
When did he start it? Because I saw him, and I spent a whole day with him at Sitka in Bozeman, end of April, I think. Yeah.
So that's right when he started it. Okay. So how much is Barklow? Barklow's down 40, dude. You won't even recognize him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you wouldn't even recognize him.
I'm going to text him right when we're done here. I was going to send me a pic.
He's a lean machine, dude. And he loves it. And he told me, he's like this suits like his whole narrative. Like, honestly, I told him like, hey, dude, a lot of the stuff you teach people to survive, I bet you there's people that can't survive without sugar for 3 days. Like, that's going to be a bigger ailment than like altitude sickness to some people. So now that he's cleaned up, he's like, I'm actually more of a survivalist on keto than being dependent on crappy carbs and crappy sugar.
Interesting.
So my inflammation's all gone. My sleep's better. My stomach's always flat. Digestion has like been way better. And actually I saw Rogan in the end of April. And when he saw me, he was just like, holy cow, dude.
Yeah.
And he's like, I could just never do keto because I didn't feel like I had gas in the tank. I'm like, you have to, it's not just do it for a month. You've got to power through. Like I said, you can be in ketosis in a few days and you can see results of being keto in a month. I'm like, but I don't think your body fully switches over to like the efficiency of processing through, fats.
Interesting.
And so actually Joe called me, I think it was on like maybe Monday on our way here. And he told me, he's like, dude, he's modified a little bit. So he's kind of like, he's more or less keto right now. And he's like, I'm 2 months in. And he said, dude, he's like, my workouts are becoming like a machine. And he's like, it took a while for me to convert over, but he's like, I really like it. And I said, yeah, man, like I don't have any reason to change back. I'm not like penalizing myself being on keto because I feel like I'm as sharp as ever right now, and it helps. It's helping me be creative too. It really is.
Oh man, you're talking me into this. I don't know. That's all. I didn't introduce myself, but yeah, for me, it's all writing. It's go, go, go all the time, like you guys. It's really cool seeing you guys and how hard you work. It is so evident how hard you work, continuing to build on this foundation that you created, and keep going. But that doesn't mean that you're like in this marathon. It's a marathon, but you're still in the sprint pace. It seems from the outside looking in, and I feel like I'm kind of in that same thing, but except without the workouts and the eating right, because there's so much writing to do. There's just so many things on the plate right now. But eventually, and sooner probably rather than later, I'm going to need to start adding the diet and the workouts back in. Because I think I pushed it about as far as I can. It's about time. So I should probably look into it.
Our friend network, like I was having this discussion with someone. Our friend network, we can't afford to like put a cruise control on because it's like, I look at you, I know you're like, I get a new red box in the mail and I'm like, dang it. He didn't like he's still freaking going, Reese is like going full throttle. Then I look at Andy, Andy already was going full throttle with Cleared Hot. Now he's ironclad, that whole
change agents.
Yeah. Change agents is freaking awesome. Right. That's a whole new thing. I mean, it's like we see Jocko, we see Evan Hafer, like
Glover,
none of our
Fieldcraft,
friends
like
around us are giving us any type of security to coast. It's like, you know, when I'm at the tack, I tell people, I'm like, I'm not walking on a slow pace. I'm trying to make it to the next place fast because I've already got something else I've got to do.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. All the things I want to do, the only reason I haven't done them is because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Like I'm not.
You got to prioritize.
I'm not turning off.
Yeah.
I mean, our network of friends, we're freaking hustlers, and we are willing to put in the effort. Like it's not going to be from lack of, you know.
No one's going to outwork.
Ethic.
Yeah.
It's not like none of us have got a cool platform, regardless of what little diversity we're in. Every one of us grind every single day. We grind it out. And, you know, nothing comes easy. You know, just because you do a book doesn't mean you can't. Like you've got to go hit every one of those those little stores and still relate to the grassroots. And I mean, it's a never quit. You got to be on point.
Yep.
But we're fortunate. I mean, we're fortunate. We've surrounded ourselves with greatness. And honestly, I feel like that community, we're all feeding off each other for work ethic.
Yeah, and each one of those people you mentioned has found their passion.
Yep.
So then they found the way to put this passion and this mission together, giving them purpose and all this. And Jocko leadership, you archery, Evan coffee, Glover survival. You know, me writing. It's just go. But the common thing is that we found this passion. And we found a way to make this passion our life, and which gives us all purpose.
We'll
which
go
is kind of
deeper.
cool.
Like, you know, the common denominator for us is hunting.
Yeah.
Dude,
Primal.
Our whole network, like when we looked back to that one event we did and we were all there in the like every one of us, our common denominator when we all get together and we start talking about what's going on, honestly, it comes down to like archery and bow hunting.
Yeah. Primal.
But then everything else goes out from that to different directions. So it's unbelievable to me that this path of archery has like put me where I'm at and surrounded me with the friendships that I have. And it's based on honestly what's truest to my heart, which is hunting. Yeah. You know, that's what I tell people. I'm a target archer to be a better bow hunter, and I'm a better bow hunter because I was a target archer. But the nucleus of that was the primal instinct of hunting and that community and, you know, a fire and, you know, blood and meat and
there's nothing more primal than that.
Yeah.
You know, that's a connection that we all, and it's actually a connection that all of us as humans across the globe have, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
Because they're only here. Everyone is only here because we had some ancestors that were good at the hunting and the fighting.
Yeah.
That's the only reason that we're alive today. But some people just don't recognize it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And some do. And still get drawn back to that fire, get drawn back to the bow. And I think it's a really cool thing. Before I let you go, because I know I want to get you on your flight, I want you guys to have lunch before you leave this place.
Lunch?
Seriously, geez. What's next for Nock On? When you look forward, are you looking forward? I mean, are you looking to tomorrow? Are you looking to next year? Are you looking 5 years out? Do you have any sort? Or are you just in this sprint to do everything you're doing now better, add new things to the list of priorities? Like what's ahead for Nock On?
I don't know. I feel like every time we think there's one little thing to go ahead, it actually like it opens 4 other doors, and I want to run down every one. Yeah. And every single time you're just like, I tell myself, don't dilute yourself to the point. And sometimes you have to reel yourself back in. Luckily, my wife and my team helps me at times reel this back in. But I just me giving back to archery is what I'm passionate about. That's what I want to do. I want to give back to archery. I want to utilize my, honestly, like kind of a regenerated health and, you know, and like drive, and I'm excited and I'm having a really good time. People are supporting our brand and our mission. And, you know, our mission is to make all bow hunters better through in-depth education, custom designed products, and, you know, and inspiring content. That's our mission statement. And dude, right now, partners like Black Rifle or PSE, you know, people that are that we all know, they're pretty much loving what we're giving back to the industry, and they're saying, how do we help you with that? So
that's awesome.
I think our path is really whatever we want to make it to be. But I can tell you this, I'm only going to do what makes me, if I'm passionate about it, I'm going to do it. And for right now, it's going to be a struggle for people to like pass me, because I'm not, my foot's on the pedal. There's a lot of content coming. There's more to come, and we're going to do a better job at letting our brand help people. That's kind of the hopes.
Awesome. Love it, man. Love it. And you're out here for TAC, Total Archery Challenge. So people should definitely go knockonarchery.com, Total Archery Challenge. I think it's .com as well.
Yeah.
Check out those events. How do people know which events you're going to be at? Because you go on Total Archery Challenge, you have the different venues.
Yeah.
Does it say which ones that you're going to be at on there?
We have to do a better job at like making my schedule current on our website, because there is a schedule section. I've been going to the ones where we're able to have our own range, and not all places allow for the extra range, which is why I don't do them all. But the ones we do, I think we do really, really well. But yeah, for our website, it's knockonarchery.com, and YouTube is Nock On Archery. But for Instagram, it's Nock On TV, which kind of goes back to the start of the brand was, was that TV side, which then gave me the platform to have 25 minutes to educate. And honestly, once at first the network wasn't convinced that me giving education was what people wanted to watch. They actually tried to limit it. And then we ended up leaving network after 6 years to go digital, because I wanted to have no time limits. They were only allowing me 2 minutes and 30 seconds to do any type of equipment education or technique education on TV.
Okay.
It was like 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Other than that, they wanted like X, Y, and Z. And I knew everyone was watching us for the 2.5 minutes, not the other X, Y, and Z. So when we decided to just say, hey, we're going to go digital, and I'm going to do what I want to do and what I'm passionate about, that's when the floodgates opened, because we proved what people wanted to consume from us. And that's easy for me, because that is my passion, is teaching people, making them better, and giving them the tools they need to get better, and seeing it on paper or on an animal.
Yeah.
So, but it's been fun watching you, dude.
It's been a sprint.
Yeah. I love it when that pelican case shows
up. Oh, nice.
And
awesome. Well, thanks for shooting it this year. It was in the hand of you didn't tell me what it was. You said there's something like, I'm gonna do something special with it. And the Yeti was holding it. And that was awesome. Yeah. You shot it. That was so sweet.
Very cool, man. Well, thanks for having me out.
Man, thank you so much for being here. And hopefully I'll get back to one at TAC at some point in the future, because I absolutely love it, and it's such a great event. But thanks so much for taking the time. Thank you for all you do, not just for archery, for bow hunters, but for veterans as well. I mean, invaluable. Can't thank you enough for all you've done for the veteran community. So thank you so much for everything, brother.
All right. Thanks, Jack.
All right. Take care.
Black Rifle Coffee Company. You can help Black Rifle Coffee raise $1 million to benefit veterans through the boot campaign. All you need to do is grab a can of ready-to-drink coffee online or from your local grocery or convenience store. The Boot Campaign is one of the most renowned veteran-focused nonprofits in the country, working tirelessly to provide life-changing aid and benefits to service members and their families. Join forces with Black Rifle in the Boot Campaign from May through the end of the year, where every can of ready-to-drink coffee you buy will contribute to making this massive donation possible. Black Rifle ready-to-drink coffee is available in several great-tasting flavors on the Black Rifle Coffee website, at your local convenience or grocery store, and no matter where you are, you can fuel your caffeine fix while supporting veterans. Every time you crack open a can of ready-to-drink, you'll be making a huge difference in the lives of veterans and their families. Black Rifle Coffee is committed to serving the veteran community, and with your help, we can all continue to make a difference. Let's raise a can together to keep fueling Americans for a good cause. Check out blackriflecoffee.com/dangerclose and use code DangerClose20 at checkout for 20% off your purchase and your first coffee club order. blackriflecoffee.com/dangerclose. Drink up. Welcome to the gear highlight portion of the Danger Close podcast. A lot to go through today before I kick it off with some of the archery, because John Dudley was today's guest of knockonarchery.com. Awesome guy. First off, this shirt though, Inglorious Amateurs. Go check them out. They have a
fairly significant and firm touch point with the intelligence community, and they make some really cool stuff. So Inglorious Amateurs, you can check them out online. If you know a little bit about the history of the CIA, OSS, well, the shirt then will mean something. So, all right, archery. Here we go. John Dudley. Bam, this is the bow we talked about today on the podcast. This is the NTN 33 right there, Nock On Custom. And I love this bow right here. Got some Sitka camo on this one, and very cool that John Dudley was able to essentially design this thing from the ground up. And as we talked about, he has 4 different models with PSE right now, and you can go and check those out. They're all at different price points, and done very intentionally to get people into archery. And that's mine right there. Absolutely love it. You might also recognize it from the opening credits to the terminal list on Amazon Prime Video starring Chris Pratt. So you can check that out there. And these are the arrows that Dudley made for me, and pretty cool right there. Has the trident right there, and yeah, very cool. Nock On. Awesome. Speaking of arrows, the night before, I'd been shooting them quite a bit and doing Total Archery Challenge type courses, and I had destroyed a few arrows. So I think it was a couple days before CBS came out here and did a little shoot with me, a little interview. I wanted to shoot the PSE bow, so Dudley sent me overnighted a bunch of new arrows, and I was out there with Jeff Glore from CBS this morning. You can find that interview. I think I put it on my Instagram, but I think I put it on my YouTube as well. But they wanted to get some B-roll stuff, so I was out there with Jeff Glore from CBS this morning, and we were doing a little archery, and he asked if I could shoot the GoPro that was on one of my targets, and I let it fly. And so one of John Dudley's arrows right there, right through the GoPro. And what we thought we'd be able to get the slow-mo from this, the arrow coming right into the GoPro, but it didn't happen that way. Went right through, but somehow jacked everything up, so we don't have the actual footage of it going into the camera, which would have been really cool. But anyway, thank you, CBS. That's my little memento from that interview. And what else did we talk about? We talked about these loopholed rangefinders, and there's one that's archery specific, but this is the RX 2800, and love this thing. So loopholed, always knocking it out of the park. Very cool. And let's see what to go to next. Oh, before I do that, right there, this is the release that I use right here, is the Nock To It. We talked about the Silverback. We talked about the Nock To It, the history behind these releases, but go to knockonarchery.com, check them out. Absolutely love this release. And you always need a couple, though, because what happens if you lose it? Good to have a backup. 2 is 1, 1 is none. I've heard that somewhere before. So right there, love this release. And knives. Oh, Jason, Pro Knife Thrower. Check him out on Instagram. Look at that blade. That thing is crazy. And this is a throwing knife that he made for me. So I haven't thrown it yet. He's going to give me some instruction at some point. But, man, I cannot wait to let this thing fly. It's taking all my self-control not to just try to put it in the wall across the room here. But look at that thing. Awesome. So, Jason, thank you so much. This is sincerely appreciated. Cannot wait to let this thing fly. So, very cool. Yesterday, did a little shoot with 3-Gun Kenzie. So Kenzie Fitzpatrick, you can find her at 3-Gun Kenzie on Instagram. And oh, there's some patches right there that she gave me. We did a little shoot down at the Park City Gun Club for Athlon Outdoors. They do a free gun Friday. We did some filming around that. It was awesome to get to shoot with Kenzie. And you can check out her podcast, which is called Reticle Up. Look at that right there. And be sure to follow her on Instagram as well. Bam, 3-Gun Kenzie. Look at that. Awesome. Thank you for those. And thank you also for this very cool gift, Hunter's Gold HD. I think that's what these glasses are called, but Hunter's Gold glasses. And yeah, these are really cool. So check those out. They have a bunch of different models, and Kenzie gave me these yesterday. Very cool. Tried them out yesterday, and they were awesome. So be sure and check them out. Hunter's Gold. And also Athlon Outdoors Ballistic Magazine. You can find what we talked about in that filming yesterday at Athlon Outdoors. So be sure and check them out, and check out their Free Gun Friday, because possibility of a free gun. And we also shot these. These are the Black Hills Honey Badger 9mm. So shot this yesterday for the first time. And if you're watching this, look at that. It's You see that right there? That is aggressive. This is pretty sweet. And they left some pretty cool holes in the targets as well. So anyway, I'm a big fan of Black Hills. If you've read the books, then you know that. Or if you shot their 77 grain down range 5.56 back in the day, then you're probably a fan of Black Hills as well. So this is the Honey Badger ammunition from Black Hills, and check them out. I was very impressed yesterday. All right. What else do we have here? Navy water polo. Look at this. Navy water polo from Minneapolis. They sent me this water polo camp, and on the back, the only easy day was yesterday. Yep. Navy water polo. Awesome. Thank you guys. Keep crushing it out there. And this, Leslie. So Leslie's Fine Art on Instagram. She saw a picture I took at the back of the house, and she painted it for me. So very cool. She also saw a picture from a trip I did to Russia a couple years back for research into my third novel, Savage Son. And it was a fishing hunting trip for research. And if you read the novel, then you know how that plays in. But she saw one of the pictures that I posted, and she made a really cool painting of one of the photos from that trip. So Leslie, thank you so much. Once again, Leslie's Fine Art on Instagram. Very cool. Thank you for this. And look at this, Allegiance Flag Supply. Definitely check out Allegiance Flag Supply. American flags made where? In the United States of America. Oh yeah, so this is a Jack Carr edition right there. You can find this on my website, officialjackcarr.com. Click on shop in the upper right-hand corner. So very cool. What a great group of people. And yep, creating American jobs made in the USA right there. And these are some high quality American flags. So check them out for sure. And what do we have here? SIG. So this right here is a P320 from the Custom Works shop, but it's also the concierge version of that pistol. So that means you can go to customworks6hour.com and you can go to concierge service for the P320. They also have it for the 365 now, and you can pick out each part of your pistol and create one for you. So this is mine right here, and this thing's pretty sick. So go check that out. Once again, 6hour.com, Custom Works section, and concierge service for P320. And I think there's one more thing. Look at this. Bravo Company USA. Awesome. And this, I have a few Bravo Company AR type weapon systems and put them in the novels. And they've also put a name point on here for me that has the Bravo Company markings, and it's the T2. And check that thing out. Look at that. They put the cross tomahawks on there for me. That was very cool. I had no idea that this was coming. So this was a surprise yesterday at the gun shop at Park City Gun Club. So Bravo Company, man, thank you guys. This thing is legit. I'll probably add a light to it, add a Viking Tactics sling to it, and maybe some irons front and rear. But wow, this thing is amazing. I love the magazine right there as well. But man, look at that. That's just sick. So thank you guys. Bravo Company USA. Awesome. All right. I think that's everything for today. Take care out there. Thank you for tuning in to the Danger Close podcast, an Ironclad original presented by Navy Federal Credit Union. To find out more about John Dudley, go to knockonarchery.com and be sure and link to his social channels, Nock On TV on Instagram and Nock On Archery on YouTube. You can follow me on the social channels at Jack Carr USA. Officialjackcarr.com is the website. Click in the upper right-hand corner on shop for the merch. And if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. Until the next time, take care out there. Stay safe, be strong, keep fighting.